Welcome, welcome, welcome to Dark Harry. Today we bring you an unforgettable story. What if Morticia Addams became Harry's mother and taught him death was beautiful? Voldemort begged, loving our content. Smash that like button and join our family by subscribing. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived Differently. The ancient grandfather clock in the Addams family foyer struck midnight with 13 ominous chimes. Morticia Addams paused her midnight rose pruning, scissors hovering over a blooming bud. Something had shifted in the magical world. She felt it like a cold wind across her soul. "Gomez," she called, her voice calm yet carrying through the mansion. Something's happened. Gomez appeared in the doorway of the conservatory, fencing foil in hand. "What is it, cara mia?" "A disturbance. Magic most dark." Morticia closed her eyes, letting her senses extend beyond the mortal plane. "The Potter line. There's been death tonight." "The Potters? Your distant relations through the black ancestry?" "Yes." Morticia set down her gardening shears. "The connection is faint but unmistakable. Blood of our blood has been spilled." Gomez sheathed his sword. "Shall we investigate, my dear?" "We must. There's something else." Morticia tilted her head, her long fingers splayed as if feeling the air. "A child has survived. A child with death's touch upon him, yet still breathing." The journey to Godric's Hollow took less time than expected. The Addams family hearse, enchanted with magic that predated modern ministry restrictions, arrived just as Hagrid was extracting a bundle from the destroyed cottage. Morticia stepped from the vehicle, her black dress trailing behind her like liquid shadow. "We've come for the child," she announced, startling the half-giant. Hagrid clutched baby Harry protectively. "Can't do that, ma'am. Dumbledore's orders. Taking him to his aunt and uncle, I am." "Petunia Dursley," Morticia said with distaste. "A woman who despised magic and her own sister." "I think not." "How'd you know? I am Morticia Addams. Lily Potter was my relation, distant but bound by both blood and magic. The boy belongs with those who understand his heritage." Hagrid looked confused and conflicted. "Dumbledore said, Dumbledore does not supersede blood right," Gomez interjected, twirling his mustache. "Magical law predating even Hogwarts gives family first claim, especially those with magical blood." From the shadows emerged a tall, gaunt figure. "She is correct, Hagrid." "Professor Snape!" Hagrid exclaimed. Snape's eyes never left Morticia. "The Addams family is indeed connected to the Evans line through an obscure magical branch. It's unconventional, but their claim is legitimate." Morticia smiled at Snape, a gesture that would have chilled ordinary souls but seemed to resonate with the potion's master. "You knew Lily well." "I did." A flicker of pain crossed Snape's face. "Then you know she would prefer her son raised by those who embrace magic rather than those who fear it." Snape nodded almost imperceptibly. "The protection spell requires blood relations, which we are," Morticia stated. "And our home has protections that predate Hogwarts itself. Dark magic cannot touch what is already embraced by darkness." After further discussion and a magical oath sworn by Morticia to protect the child with her life, Hagrid reluctantly handed over the sleeping bundle. Harry Potter, his forehead freshly marked with lightning, passed into the arms of his new mother. "Welcome to the family, my little raven," Morticia whispered. "Death has kissed you but let you live. How extraordinary you must be." The ancient Addams mansion welcomed its newest member with creaking floors and whispering portraits. The family gathered in the great hall, Gomez and Morticia, Grandmama with her potions, Fester with his gleeful explosive experiments, Lurch at the organ, and Wednesday and Pugsley, still young themselves but fascinated by their new brother. "He's so normal-looking," Wednesday commented, peering into Harry's makeshift cradle. "Appearances can be deceiving, my darling," Morticia said. "Feel his magic. It pulses with darkness and light intertwined. Can I teach him to play with dynamite? Pugsley asked hopefully. When he's older, mon cher, Morticia promised. For now, he needs love and to understand that death is not something to be feared, but respected and even admired. Grandmama hobbled forward, her ancient eyes examining the sleeping baby. The boy has survived the killing curse. Death marked him as special. Yes, Morticia agreed, lightly touching the lightning scar. He will grow up understanding that death is simply another phase of existence, beautiful in its own right. The wizarding world will come looking for him eventually, Gomez noted, puffing his cigar. Let them, Morticia said with serene confidence. By then, he'll be an Addams in all the ways that matter. Harry Potter grew up knowing he was loved. It wasn't the conventional love that other children might experience, but it was deep, consistent, and absolute. Death was discussed at the breakfast table as casually as the weather. Magic was practiced openly and joyfully throughout the mansion. By age 5, Harry could communicate with the family's sentient plants, much to Morticia's delight. Look, Mother. Harry called excitedly, as the Venus flytrap playfully snapped at his fingers without actually biting. Cleopatra is telling me about the fly she caught yesterday. Morticia glided over, her pale face beaming with pride. Wonderful, darling. The plants recognize you as family. At 7, Uncle Fester taught Harry the joy of creating small, controlled explosions. The key is respecting the destructive power, Fester explained as they stood in the family cemetery, a makeshift lab set up on a flat tombstone. Boom isn't just a sound, it's a celebration of transformation. Harry nodded seriously, his green eyes bright behind small round glasses. Destruction isn't the end, it's change. Exactly, my boy. Fester cackled, mixing chemicals with abandon. Your birth parents understood transformation too. They transformed into the beyond, leaving behind their most precious creation, you. The Addams family never hid the truth of Harry's origins. They spoke of Lily and James Potter with respect and even a touch of envy for their magnificent, dramatic deaths. Your mother stood between you and death itself, Morticia would tell Harry during their nightly readings in the library. Not because she feared death, but because she knew it wasn't your time. True love isn't about preventing death, it's about respecting its proper moment. Harry grew up with Wednesday and Pugsley as his siblings, learning their peculiar games and adding his own magical twists. When his accidental magic manifested, it was celebrated rather than feared. The time he turned his teacher's wig blue was met with a family feast in his honor. Magic finds expression in the most delightful ways, Gomez declared, raising a glass of something that smoked ominously. To Harry's developing powers. To Harry, the family cheered. The ancient house itself seemed to recognize Harry as one of its own. Doors opened for him, staircases shifted to help him reach high shelves, and the family portraits accepted him as an Addams, regardless of his birth name. On Harry's 10th birthday, Morticia took him to the family vault, a cavernous chamber beneath the mansion filled with artifacts that would have sent the Ministry of Magic into conniptions had they known of their existence. Every Addams chooses their first personal magical focus on their 10th birthday, she explained, gesturing to the collection of items ranging from ancient wands to cursed jewelry to books bound in materials Harry couldn't identify. Harry walked slowly along the displays, letting his instincts guide him. His hand hovered over several items before finally settling on a slender silver athame with a handle carved from bone. The ritual dagger of Alestrina Addams, Morticia identified, looking pleased. She was known for her ability to cut through illusions and see the truth beyond veils. It feels right, Harry said, carefully picking it up. The dagger hummed in his hand, a soft vibration that synchronized with his heartbeat. Remember, darling, a focus is just that, a way to direct what's already inside you. The magic comes from your connection to life, death, and the shadows between. Harry nodded solemnly. I understand, Mother. Morticia kissed the top of his head, leaving a faint lipstick mark. I know you do. That's why you're such a perfect Addams. The Hogwarts letter arrived carried by a rather nervous-looking barn owl. The poor creature nearly dropped the envelope when Lurch opened the door, but recovered admirably and completed its mission. "It's here!" Harry shouted, racing through the house with the parchment envelope clutched in his hand. "My Hogwarts letter!" The family converged in the great hall, Wednesday looking mildly envious while Pugsley examined the wax seal with destructive interest. "Can I melt it?" he asked hopefully. "After I've read it," Harry promised, carefully breaking the seal and unfolding the parchment. Morticia read over his shoulder, her expression thoughtful. Hogwarts. So conventional in many ways, yet still the finest magical education available. "Will I have to pretend to be normal?" Harry asked, wrinkling his nose at the thought. Gomez laughed heartily, clapping Harry on the shoulder. "My boy, an Addams never pretends. We are what we are, and the world adjusts accordingly." "Your father is right," Morticia agreed. "But you will encounter many who don't understand our ways. Remember what I've taught you about patience with the uninitiated." Harry nodded. "People fear what they don't understand, and most fear death above all things." "Precisely," Morticia stroked his unruly black hair, which stubbornly refused to lie flat despite years of grandmama's potions. "You'll show them another way, in time." The celebration of Harry's acceptance involved all the Addams traditions, a feast of peculiar delicacies, dancing to Lurch's organ playing, and finally, a midnight visit to the family graveyard to share the news with the ancestors. "To Hogwarts," Gomez declared, raising a goblet of something that glowed faintly green. To Harry, the family responded, their voices echoing among the headstones. Later, as embers from the graveyard bonfire died down, Harry sat with Morticia on a stone bench beside the plot reserved for him. An Addams tradition she had explained was about embracing one's eventual fate. "I'll miss you all terribly," Harry admitted. "Death and separation are cousins, my darling," Morticia said, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "Both painful, both necessary, both ultimately beautiful because they give meaning to reunion." Harry leaned against her. "Will the other students think I'm strange?" Morticia's laugh was like midnight wine through a cemetery. "Undoubtedly. But strangeness is a gift. Your perspective on death will unsettle them, but in time, it may free them." She squeezed his shoulder gently. "Just remember who you are, Harry Potter Addams, child of both worlds, feared by neither." Diagon Alley bustled with preterm shopping activity. The Addams family's arrival created ripples of reaction as witches and wizards instinctively moved aside, sensing something ancient and powerful in their presence. "Gringotts first," Morticia decided, guiding the family toward the gleaming white building. "You have two inheritances to claim, Harry, the Potter Vault and your Addams allowance." The goblins, unlike the humans, showed immediate respect to the Addams family. The head teller actually smiled, a disconcerting sight, when Morticia approached. "Madam Addams," he greeted with a bow. "It has been too long since your family graced our halls." "Master Gornick," Morticia acknowledged. "We're here for Harry to access his vaults." The goblin's gaze shifted to Harry, and his eyes widened slightly at the lightning scar. "Mr. Potter Addams. We've been expecting you eventually." He leaned closer. "The wizarding world believes you hidden away somewhere secret. They've been searching for years." "I've been home," Harry said simply. The trip to the Potter Vault was eye-opening for Harry. He'd grown up with the Addams wealth, of course, but seeing the tangible connection to his birth parents, the gold they had touched, the few personal items stored there, brought a lump to his throat. "It's okay to feel, darling," Morticia said, noticing his expression. "Death separates bodies, not connections." The Addams Vault, located far deeper in the caverns, was something else entirely. Less a money repository and more a collection of items too dangerous or valuable to keep even in their home vault. Harry was allowed to select one additional item as his Hogwarts gift. After careful consideration, he chose a small onyx box that, when opened, revealed absolute darkness. The void box, Gomez identified. Excellent choice. Contains a small piece of the nothingness that existed before creation. Very handy for disposing of unwanted things, or people, in a pinch, he added with a wink. Their shopping expedition continued with the procurement of standard Hogwarts supplies, though each with an Addams twist. At the apothecary, Morticia insisted on supplements to the basic potions kit. Nightshade, hemlock, and essence of belladonna, she instructed the wide-eyed shopkeeper. All standard ingredients in our family recipes. Ma'am, those are restricted, for my personal use, Morticia clarified smoothly. To send to Harry when he needs proper medication. At Flourish and Blots, alongside the required textbooks, Gomez added several ancient tomes on magical traditions the ministry preferred forgotten. Knowledge is never dark, my boy, he told Harry as they checked out. Only intentions cast shadows. The wand-maker's shop, however, proved the most interesting encounter. The bell tinkled ominously as they entered Ollivander's, and the ancient wand-maker himself appeared from the shadows, his silvery eyes widening at the sight of the Addams family. I wondered when I'd be seeing you, Mr. Potter, he said softly before turning to Morticia. And Madam Addams. 13 inches, blackthorn with a core of thestral hair. One of the few experimental cores I've worked with. It serves me well, Morticia confirmed, subtly touching the wand concealed in her sleeve. And now for the young man. Ollivander focused on Harry with unnerving intensity. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Your mother's was particularly good for charm work, while your father's excelled in transfiguration. What followed was nearly an hour of trying various wands, each reacting more dramatically than the last. Shelves collapsed, windows cracked, and at one point, a shower of black roses erupted from the tip of a particularly rebellious wand. Tricky customer, Ollivander muttered, looking more excited than concerned. I wonder. He disappeared into the back of his shop and returned with a dusty box. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches. An unusual combination. The moment Harry touched it, he felt warmth spread through his fingers. When he waved it, a stream of silver and black sparks shot from the end, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Curious, Ollivander murmured. Very curious. What's curious? Harry asked. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. The phoenix who gave the feather for your wand gave only one other. It's curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Voldemort's wand, Harry said, not a question. Ollivander flinched at the name, but nodded. Morticia placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. A connection to the one who marked him with death's touch. How perfectly poetic. Harry examined the wand with new appreciation. Brother wands with the man who killed my parents. Life has a macabre sense of humor, doesn't it? Ollivander looked startled at the boy's reaction, clearly expecting horror rather than philosophical acceptance. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I believe we can expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great. Greatness isn't measured by terror, Harry replied, sounding older than his 11 years. It's measured by transformation. Death isn't the enemy, fear is. As they left the shop, Morticia squeezed Harry's shoulder approvingly. Beautifully said, my darling. Their final stop was Elop's Owl Emporium, where Harry was drawn to a snowy white owl who regarded him with amber eyes that seemed to contain ancient wisdom. She's perfect, Harry declared. I'll name her Athena. The owl gave a soft, approving hoot. As they headed home with their purchases, Harry found himself both excited and apprehensive about the journey ahead. Remember who you are, Morticia told him that night as she helped him pack his trunk. You're a child of two worlds, born to James and Lily Potter, raised by Gomez and Morticia Addams. You understand what most wizards have forgotten, that death is not to be conquered but embraced as part of life's beautiful cycle. Harry nodded solemnly. I won't forget. And write to us, she added, a rare vulnerability in her voice. The mansion will feel emptier without your footsteps. I'll write every week, Harry promised. And I'll make you proud. Morticia cupped his face in her cool hands. You already do, my little raven. You already do. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity as families bid farewell to students boarding the Hogwarts Express. The Addams family's appearance caused a predictable stir, whispers followed them as they moved through the crowd, parents pulling children closer as if darkness might be contagious. They're staring, Harry noted. Of course they are, Wednesday said matter-of-factly. You're Harry Potter and we're Addamses. Either would be enough. Gomez chuckled, adjusting Harry's collar. Remember, my boy, an Addams never apologizes for existing. And never explains, Pugsley added, looking enviously at the train. Can I blow it up after it leaves? Next year, perhaps, Morticia soothed, before turning to Harry. Do you have everything? You're a Thame, the void box, your father's invisibility cloak. Harry patted his pockets and nodded. The invisibility cloak had been delivered mysteriously the week before, with only a note claiming it had belonged to James Potter and should pass to his son. The train will depart soon, Lurch intoned, checking his pocket watch. After final embraces from each family member, including Thing, who had stowed away in Harry's pocket before being discovered and reluctantly removed, Harry boarded the train. He found an empty compartment and waved from the window as the train pulled away, watching his family grow smaller until they disappeared from sight. He'd barely settled in when the compartment door slid open and a red-headed boy poked his head in. Mind if I sit? Everywhere else is full. Please, Harry gestured to the seat opposite. I'm Ron. Ron Weasley, the boy said, sitting down. Harry Potter Addams, Harry replied, offering his hand. Ron's eyes widened comically. Blimey. You're Harry Potter. Do you really have the, you know? He gestured to his forehead. Harry lifted his fringe to reveal the lightning scar. The mark where death touched me but didn't take me. Yes. Wicked, Ron breathed, then frowned slightly. But wait, Addams. I thought you lived with Muggles. The Addams family adopted me after my parents were murdered. They're distant relations on my mother's side. Harry smiled. They're a bit unusual, but they're wonderful. Addams. Ron's face scrunched in concentration. My dad mentioned them once. Said they practice old magic. Really old. That's right, Harry confirmed. Mother says some traditions shouldn't be forgotten just because they make people uncomfortable. Before Ron could respond, the compartment door opened again. A bushy-haired girl already in her Hogwarts robes stood there with a round-faced boy who looked teary. Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one, she said in a bossy voice. No toads here, Ron replied. Though I wish I could say the same for my rat. He indicated the sleeping rat in his lap. The girl's eyes landed on Harry. Holy cricket. You're Harry Potter. Potter Addams, Harry corrected gently. I'm Hermione Granger, she introduced herself, then turned to Ron. And you are? Ron Weasley, he mumbled through a mouthful of chocolate frog. Pleasure, Hermione said perfunctorily before turning back to Harry. I've read all about you, of course. You're in modern magical history, the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century. Am I? Harry asked, genuinely curious. What do they say? That you vanquished you-know-who as a baby, then disappeared. Some think you were being trained in secret, others that you were hidden for protection. Her eyes narrowed. But they don't mention any Addams family. The wizarding world lost track of me, Harry explained. My family prefers privacy. The journey continued with intermittent visits from curious students eager to glimpse the boy who lived. Harry handled the attention with calm courtesy that seemed to surprise people expecting either arrogance or shyness. As daylight faded and the train approached Hogsmeade Station, Harry changed into his school robes. He'd insisted on having them made of slightly better material than standard, with subtle silver thread worked into the hems, a compromise after Morticia had initially wanted full black silk with silver skull buttons. Hagrid's familiar form greeted the first years at the station. His eyes widened when he spotted Harry. "Harry. Last time I saw ya was only a baby." The giant's eyes grew misty. "Ya look like your dad, but with your mom's eyes." "Hello, Hagrid," Harry greeted warmly. "Mother and father send their regards." Hagrid looked momentarily confused before understanding dawned. "Ah, the Addams lady. Bit frightening, she was, but determined to have ya. How've they treated ya?" "Wonderfully," Harry said sincerely. "I couldn't ask for a better family." Hagrid nodded, seemingly relieved. "Good, good. Now, fir's years this way to the boats." The traditional journey across the lake offered Harry his first view of Hogwarts Castle. Even raised in the Gothic splendor of the Addams mansion, he found himself impressed by the ancient structure silhouetted against the night sky, windows glowing like 1,000 candles. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "Bit spooky," Ron commented beside him. Harry smiled. "That's what makes it beautiful." The sorting ceremony began after Professor McGonagall's stern welcome. Harry watched with interest as students were sorted into their houses, noting the different reactions and house characteristics. Granger, Hermione. The bushy-haired girl from the train practically ran to the stool and jammed the hat on her head. Gryffindor, the hat shouted after a moment's deliberation. More names were called, and finally, Potter Addams, Harry. Whispers immediately erupted around the hall. "Potter? Did she say Potter? Why'd she say Addams too? The Harry Potter?" Harry walked calmly to the stool, back straight as Morticia had taught him, and placed the hat on his head. "Interesting," a small voice said in his ear. "Very interesting. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh yes, and a thirst to prove yourself. But what's this? Raised by the Addams family? How extraordinary. They're my family," Harry thought back. "They taught me that darkness isn't something to fear." Indeed, indeed. You have a most unusual perspective on death for one so young. You do well in Slytherin with that kind of understanding. "I'm not afraid of any house," Harry replied mentally. "Mother says labels are for those who lack the imagination to see beyond them." The hat chuckled. "Your adopted mother sounds wise in her way. Well then, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor." The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers, with the Weasley twins chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter." Harry took his seat next to Hermione, across from Ron who had also been sorted into Gryffindor. As the feast appeared, he noted with amusement that the food was much more conventional than Addams' family meals. "Is it true?" an older student asked eagerly. "Were you really raised by the Addams family?" "Yes," Harry confirmed, helping himself to roast beef. "They adopted me after my parents were murdered." "But they're—" The boy seemed to search for a polite word. "Unusual?" Harry suggested with a smile. "Yes, wonderfully so. I've heard stories about them," another student whispered. "They practice dark magic." Harry shook his head. "They practice old magic. There's a difference. My mother says magic isn't dark or light, it's intent that matters." Throughout the feast, Harry occasionally glanced at the staff table. He'd been briefed by Morticia about key figures, Dumbledore, who had initially wanted him placed with the Dursleys, McGonagall, strict but fair, and Snape, who had known his mother and helped facilitate his placement with the Addams family. When his eyes met Snape's, the professor gave him a long, inscrutable look before turning away. At the same moment, Harry felt a sharp pain in his scar. "Are you all right?" Hermione asked, noticing his wince. "Fine," Harry assured her. "Just a twinge. Mother says it's sensitive to magical atmospheres." As the feast concluded and Dumbledore gave his welcoming speech, Harry found himself studying the headmaster with interest. The elderly wizard's eyes twinkled when they passed over Harry, but there was something assessing in his gaze too. The Gryffindor prefect, Percy Weasley, led the first years to their dormitory. The Gryffindor common room was warm and cozy, filled with squashy armchairs and dominated by a roaring fire, quite different from the elegant chill of the Addams mansion. "It's so bright," Harry commented, earning odd looks from his classmates. That night, as Harry settled into his four-poster bed, he reflected on the day's events. He was Harry Potter here, the boy who lived, a figure of myth and expectation. But he was also Harry Addams, raised to see beauty in darkness and peace in death. Reconciling these identities would be his first challenge at Hogwarts. As sleep claimed him, his last thought was of Morticia's parting words, "Remember, darling, in embracing death's inevitability, you'll find life's true freedom." Classes began the following day, plunging Harry into the formal education of wizardry. He quickly discovered that his Addams upbringing had given him both advantages and perspectives that set him apart from his classmates. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall demonstrated turning her desk into a pig and back again. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts, she warned. Anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. When they began trying to turn matches into needles, Harry succeeded on his third attempt, earning 5 points for Gryffindor and a rare smile from McGonagall. Mother's lessons in transformation, he explained to an impressed Hermione. She says changing form doesn't change essence. Charms proved similarly intuitive for Harry. Professor Flitwick, the tiny charms teacher, squeaked excitedly when he reached Harry's name during roll call and toppled off his stack of books. Herbology took place in the greenhouses behind the castle. Harry's experience with Morticia's Conservatory of Deadly and Sentient Plants gave him a natural affinity for the subject. The key is respecting them as living beings with their own desires, he told Neville Longbottom, who showed surprising aptitude despite his nervousness. Plants understand more than people think. History of Magic, taught by the ghost Professor Binns, amused Harry greatly. While other students struggled to stay awake through Binns' monotonous lectures, Harry took meticulous notes. "You actually like this class?" Ron asked incredulously after one particularly dull lesson on goblin rebellions. "It's fascinating," Harry replied. "These are stories of people who lived and died for their beliefs. Their deaths shaped our world as much as their lives did. Defense against the dark arts proved disappointing. Professor Quirrell, with his ridiculous turban and nervous stutter, seemed afraid of his own subject. Dark creatures are all around us," he stammered. "We must learn to defend ourselves." Harry raised his hand. "Professor, isn't it more effective to understand the dark creatures rather than just fear them? Mother says fear creates enemies where knowledge might create respect." Quirrell stared at Harry as if he'd grown a second head. "Some things, Mr. P. Potter, are inherently dangerous." "It's Potter Addams, sir," Harry corrected politely. "And I agree about the danger. I just disagree that fear is the appropriate response." The class that Harry approached with particular interest was potions. Given Snape's history with his mother and role in his placement with the Addams family, he was curious about their first interaction. The potions classroom was in the dungeons, cold and lined with jars of preserved specimens that reminded Harry pleasantly of Grandmama's kitchen. Snape, like Flitwick, began with roll call, pausing at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly, "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." "Potter Addams, sir," Harry corrected respectfully. Snape's black eyes fixed on Harry's green ones. Something unreadable flickered in their depths. "Indeed. How unusual to have an Addams in these halls. I trust your family has prepared you adequately." "Yes, sir. Grandmama has been teaching me potions since I was 5. A ghost of a smile touched Snape's lips. "We shall see." The lesson proceeded with Snape questioning Harry intensively. "Potter Addams, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? The draught of living death, sir, Harry answered promptly. Grandmama calls it the cousin of true death, it mimics death's appearance without its release. Snape's eyebrows rose fractionally. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? In the stomach of a goat, sir. It will save you from most poisons. Though Grandmama prefers to build immunity through gradual exposure. Snape's expression remained impassive, but there was a calculating look in his eyes. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? They're the same plant, sir. Also called aconite. Mother grows it in the conservatory for its aesthetic appeal and medicinal properties. Medicinal properties? Snape prompted. In controlled doses, it can slow the heart to near-death states, allowing for deeper communion with ancestral spirits, Harry explained, repeating what Morticia had taught him. Or so Mother says. The classroom had fallen completely silent, students looking between Harry and Snape with wide eyes. It seems the Addams education has some merit, Snape finally said. 5 points to Gryffindor for adequate preparation. The class collectively gasped. Snape awarding points to Gryffindor was unprecedented. As they filed out after class, Hermione cornered Harry. How did you know all that? Those weren't in our first-year textbooks. Harry shrugged. Grandmama's lessons. Potions are a specialty in our family. And what was that about communing with ancestral spirits? Ron asked, looking disturbed. You don't actually believe that stuff, do you? Whether I believe it or not, the properties of the plant remain the same, Harry replied diplomatically. As the weeks passed, Harry settled into Hogwarts life while maintaining his Addams identity. His letters home were filled with observations that reflected his unique perspective. Dear Mother and Father, he wrote one evening, Hogwarts continues to be fascinating. The ghosts here are remarkably well adjusted to their state, particularly the Gryffindor ghost, Sir Nicholas, though he dislikes being called, nearly headless. I told him about our family's annual séance and he seemed quite interested in attending someday. I've made friends with Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. Ron comes from an old wizarding family, though they don't practice the old ways. Hermione is Muggle-born but brilliant, she reminds me of Wednesday in her intensity, though with less interest in creative destruction. Classes are going well. I'm particularly enjoying potions, though Professor Snape is feared by most students. He seems to appreciate my Addams education, especially after I correctly identified all the ingredients in a draught of living death by smell alone. The forbidden forest at the edge of the grounds reminds me of our family woods, though students are prohibited from entering. I suspect there are wonderful creatures inside, perhaps someday I'll have the opportunity to meet them properly. Please give my love to everyone. I miss our midnight nature walks and Grandmama's special brews. The food here is abundant but lacks a certain Addams flair, not a single dish has tried to bite back yet. With affectionate thoughts, Harry, Morticia's replies were equally distinctive, often including pressed specimens from her greenhouse and advice that caused Harry's friends to look concerned when he shared it. Your mother suggested what? Ron exclaimed after Harry mentioned Morticia's recommendation for dealing with homesickness, sleeping with a vial of graveyard soil under his pillow. It's just a family tradition, Harry explained. The soil connects you to your ancestors. That's... Hermione seemed to struggle for an appropriate word. Different, Ron finished weakly. Harry smiled. Mother would take that as a compliment. Halloween arrived with a feast that impressed even by Hogwarts standards. The Great Hall was decorated with live bats, giant pumpkins, and floating candles that cast eerie shadows. Halloween is Mother's favorite holiday, Harry told his friends as they entered the hall. In our family, it's a night to honor death and celebrate its beauty. Celebrate death. Ron looked queasy. Mate, that's morbid. Not at all, Harry disagreed. It's acknowledging the natural cycle. Mother says fearing death gives it power over you. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Professor Quirrell, who sprinted into the hall, turban askew and terror on his face. "Troll," he gasped. "In the dungeons. Thought you ought to know." He then collapsed in a dead faint. The hall erupted in chaos until Dumbledore shot purple firecrackers from his wand to restore silence. "Prefects," he rumbled, "lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately." As they followed Percy through the crowds, Harry suddenly grabbed Ron's arm. "Hermione. What about her? She doesn't know about the troll. She's been in the bathroom crying all afternoon after what you said about her." Ron looked guilty. "Oh, all right. But Percy'd better not see us." They slipped away from the Gryffindors and hurried toward the girls' bathroom. Turning a corner, they came face to face with the troll, 12 feet tall, granite gray, with a tiny head perched atop a massive lumpy body. And it was entering the very bathroom where Hermione was. "We have to help her," Harry said, drawing his wand. They rushed in to find Hermione shrinking against the wall, looking ready to faint as the troll advanced on her, knocking sinks off walls as it went. "Confuse it," Harry said desperately to Ron, seizing a tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then made for Harry instead, raising its club. "Hey, pea-brain!" Ron yelled, throwing a metal pipe at it. The distraction worked momentarily, but the troll was now enraged. It roared and swung its club at Ron, who was trapped against the wall. Harry did something that was both very brave and very reminiscent of his Addams upbringing. He took a running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but it certainly noticed when Harry's wand, still in his hand, went straight up one of its nostrils. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed, trying to dislodge Harry, its club swinging wildly. "Ron!" Harry called. "Do something." Ron pulled out his wand and, with a sudden inspiration, performed the first spell that came to mind, Wingardium Leviosa. The club flew out of the troll's hand, rose high into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack, onto its owner's head. The troll swayed, then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet, shaking and out of breath. "Is it dead?" "I don't think so," Ron said. "Just knocked out." Harry retrieved his wand from the troll's nose, wiping it on the creature's trousers. "Fascinating," he murmured, examining the troll more closely now that it wasn't trying to kill them. "Such misunderstood creatures. Uncle Fester would love to meet one." Ron and Hermione stared at him in disbelief. "Misunderstood?" Hermione squeaked. "It tried to kill us." "Only because it was confused and frightened," Harry reasoned. "Mother says most violent acts stem from fear or misunderstanding." A sudden slamming of doors and loud footsteps interrupted their discussion as Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell burst into the room. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly on a toilet, clutching his heart. McGonagall looked furious. "What on earth were you thinking? You're lucky you weren't killed." To everyone's surprise, Hermione spoke up. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now." The professors were skeptical, but in the end, they escaped with only minimal punishment, 5 points from Gryffindor for Hermione's supposed foolishness, and 5 points each to Harry and Ron for sheer dumb luck. As they walked back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry noticed Snape limping. "He's hurt," Harry observed quietly. "Serves him right," Ron muttered. "Greasy git. I wonder how it happened," Harry mused. And why he was near the 3rd floor when the troll was supposedly in the dungeons. From that moment on, Hermione became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. As November brought bitter cold to the Scottish Highlands, Harry discovered a new aspect of wizarding culture, Quidditch. After being spotted catching Neville's Remembrall during their first flying lesson, Harry had been appointed seeker for the Gryffindor team, the youngest in a century. The morning of his first match, Harry received a long, slender package at breakfast. "That's a broomstick," Ron said, enviously. "Who sent it?" Harry found the card attached, "To our darling Harry, for your sporting endeavor. We've enchanted it with several family protections, nothing the rules explicitly forbid. Remember what Grandmama says, it's not winning that matters, but how dramatically you play the game." With macabre affection, Mother and Father, the broom turned out to be a top-of-the-line Nimbus 2000. When Harry showed it to Wood, the Gryffindor captain, he insisted on checking it for curses. "The Addams family has a reputation," he explained awkwardly. "No offense, Potter." "None taken," Harry assured him. "It's a reasonable precaution. Though I assure you, my family would never send me anything harmful." "Harmful to you," Hermione muttered. "What about the other players?" Harry smiled enigmatically. "Mother has a strict policy against unprovoked aggression." The match against Slytherin began smoothly enough. Harry circled above the action, searching for the golden snitch as Wood had instructed. Then, without warning, his broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. It happened again, as though the broom was trying to buck him off. "What's Harry doing?" Hagrid's voice carried from the stands. "If I didn't know better, I'd say he'd lost control of his broom." Harry's broom was now zigzagging through the air, making violent swishing movements that almost unseated him. Yet, remarkably, Harry looked more intrigued than frightened, even as he clung to the bucking broomstick. In the stands, Hermione grabbed Hagrid's binoculars and frantically scanned the crowd until she spotted Snape, staring unblinkingly at Harry, muttering steadily under his breath. "It's Snape," she gasped to Ron. "He's jinxing the broom. What do we do?" "Leave it to me." Hermione disappeared, reappearing minutes later beneath the stands where Snape sat. She crept behind him, set fire to his robes, and slipped away as he leapt up with a yelp. Up in the air, Harry suddenly found he could control his broom again. As he swooped back into the game, he spotted the snitch near the ground. He dived after it, racing the Slytherin seeker, then stood up on his broom, balancing perfectly as only someone trained in Gomez's fencing lessons could, before toppling forward. The crowd gasped as Harry hit the field on all fours, coughed, and something gold fell into his hand. "I've got the snitch," he shouted, waving it above his head. Slytherin protested, but the rules were clear. Harry hadn't caught it in his mouth, but the catch was legal. Gryffindor had won. Later, over tea in Hagrid's hut, Hermione revealed what she'd seen. "It was Snape," she insisted. "He was cursing your broom, Harry. I saw him." "Rubbish," Hagrid dismissed. "Why would Snape do something like that?" Harry remained thoughtful. "I'm not sure it was a curse." "Of course it was." Ron exclaimed. "You nearly fell off." "No, I mean, it felt different." Harry frowned, trying to articulate what he'd sensed. "Mother has taught me to recognize different magical signatures. There were two magical forces working on my broom, not one. Two." Hermione looked skeptical. "One felt protective," Harry continued. "The other malevolent. They were fighting over control of the broom." "Are you saying Snape was trying to save you?" Ron looked incredulous. Harry shrugged. "I don't know. But I do know my family enchanted the broom with protective spells. Perhaps they were reacting to something." The conversation shifted to why someone might want to harm Harry, which led to speculation about what might be hidden on the forbidden third-floor corridor. Something Hagrid accidentally revealed involved a three-headed dog named Fluffy and someone called Nicholas Flamel. "Fluffy?" Harry perked up. "A three-headed dog? How magnificent! Is he like Cerberus from Greek mythology?" Hagrid looked surprised at Harry's reaction. "Yerry not scared? Why would I be? We had a two-headed cobra as a pet when I was 7, Harry replied matter-of-factly. His name was Janus. Sadly, his heads disagreed about hibernation timing. Ron and Hermione exchanged the look they often did when Harry mentioned his unusual upbringing, a mixture of fascination and mild horror. As they walked back to the castle, Harry found himself thinking about Nicholas Flamel. The name sounded familiar, perhaps from one of the ancient tomes in the Addams family library. He made a mental note to ask in his next letter home. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive atmosphere to Hogwarts. When Professor McGonagall came around collecting names of those staying for the holidays, Harry signed up. The Addams family was touring the catacombs of Paris, an annual tradition, and had invited Harry to join them for the second week of break. "You could come to my house," Ron offered. "Mum would love to have you." "Thank you," Harry said sincerely, "but I'm looking forward to exploring Hogwarts when it's quieter. Besides, my family will be back from Paris by New Year's, and they're planning a special celebration at the mansion." "What kind of special celebration?" Hermione asked warily. "The Addams New Year's Eve midnight ritual," Harry explained. "We summon the spirits of the year past to bid them farewell and invite the spirits of the year to come." "That sounds..." Ron searched for a diplomatic response. "Educational," Hermione supplied. Harry grinned. "It's actually quite fun. Last year, Great Aunt Drusilla's ghost got into Uncle Fester's prototype fireworks. The explosion was visible from 3 counties away. On Christmas morning, Harry woke to find a small pile of packages at the foot of his bed. The first, from Hagrid, contained a roughly cut wooden flute. From Hermione, he received a box of chocolate frogs. Ron's mother had sent a hand-knitted emerald green sweater and homemade fudge. The largest package was from the Addams family, an ornate black chest with silver hinges. The note attached read, "Dearest Harry, for your first Christmas away from home, we wanted to send a piece of the mansion to you. This chest contains some family essentials we thought might bring comfort: a vial of swamp miasma from the family bog, for homesickness, one of Cleopatra's seedlings, she misses you, a selection of Grandmama's medicinal potions, properly labeled, a small box of Wednesday's handcrafted explosives, use responsibly, Cousin Itt's hair tonic, in case of magical accidents, a family grimoire with basic protection spells. The non-restricted ones, the chest itself is enchanted to open only for Addams blood or those you explicitly trust. We'll see you at New Year's. The spirits have been asking for you. Darkest blessings, Mother, Father, Wednesday, Pugsley, Lurch, Thing, and Grandmama, Blimey," Ron breathed, looking over Harry's shoulder. "Your family sends you explosives for Christmas?" "Only the non-lethal kind," Harry assured him, examining Wednesday's carefully labeled box with appreciation. "She's getting quite good at controlling the blast radius." One final package remained, small and light, wrapped in plain paper. Inside was a fluid, silvery gray cloth that slipped through Harry's fingers like water. "That's an invisibility cloak." Ron gasped, dropping his box of every flavor beans. "They're really rare and valuable." Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron yelped as Harry's body disappeared, leaving only his head floating in midair. "There's a note," Harry said, picking up a card that had fallen from the wrapping. The narrow, looping writing was unfamiliar. "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you." There was no signature. "I'd give anything for one of those," Ron said enviously, admiring the cloak. "Who sent it?" "It doesn't say," Harry replied, running his hands over the silky material. "It belonged to my birth father." That night, Harry decided to test the cloak. Wrapped in its invisible folds, he wandered the castle freely, exploring corridors and rooms he hadn't seen before. Eventually, he found himself in an unused classroom containing nothing but a magnificent mirror with an ornate gold frame, standing on 2 clawed feet. Inscribed across the top were the words, "Erist stra eru oit ube kafru oit onwosi." When Harry stepped in front of the mirror, he had to clap his hands to his mouth to prevent himself from screaming. He wasn't alone in the reflection. Behind him stood a crowd of people, his birth parents, James and Lily Potter, smiling and waving, and behind them, the Addams family, looking exactly as they always did. Morticia with her elegant pallor, Gomez with his exuberant mustache, Wednesday with her solemn eyes, Pugsley with his mischievous grin, lurched towering above them all. Harry stared transfixed at the impossible gathering, his birth family and his adoptive family together, united in their love for him. So you, like many before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erist. Harry turned to see Albus Dumbledore sitting on a desk against the wall. I didn't see you, sir. Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you, Dumbledore smiled. So, you've discovered what the mirror does? It shows my family, Harry said. Both families, the Potters and the Addamses. And what do you think that means? Harry considered. Mother, Morticia, says desires reveal our true nature. I suppose I desire wholeness, to connect my past and present. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. An insightful answer, Harry. The mirror shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. He paused. You have had an unusual upbringing with the Addams family. They've been wonderful, Harry said firmly. They've taught me that darkness isn't something to fear, it's part of the natural balance. An uncommon philosophy, Dumbledore noted. Particularly regarding death. Death is just another phase of existence, Harry replied, repeating Morticia's teachings. Fearing it gives it power over you. Accepting it as natural and beautiful gives you freedom. Dumbledore studied Harry with new interest. That is not the perspective I expected from the boy who lived. Perhaps that's why I lived, Harry suggested. My mother, Lily, used death to create protection. She understood its power. Indeed she did. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled behind his half-moon spectacles. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry. I ask you not to go looking for it again. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Harry nodded. Mother says much the same thing about seances. Visit the dead respectfully, but don't linger too long at their table. Dumbledore chuckled. Your Morticia sounds like a wise woman, in her way. Now, why don't you put that admirable cloak back on and get off to bed? As Harry turned to leave, he hesitated. Sir. What do you see when you look in the mirror? I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks. One can never have enough socks. Harry smiled, recognizing an evasion when he heard one. The Addams family had taught him that everyone had secrets, and the right to keep them. The remainder of the school year brought a series of adventures for Harry and his friends. They discovered Nicholas Flamel was the creator of the Philosopher's Stone, a revelation that came not from research in the library, but from a letter from Morticia. Darling Harry, your inquiry about Nicholas Flamel brought back delightful memories. He attended your great-great-grandmother Desdemona's 100th birthday celebration in 1762. A charming alchemist, though somewhat obsessed with immortality, a common but misguided pursuit, in our view. His greatest achievement was the Philosopher's Stone, which produces the elixir of life. We have his original formula in the family archives, though we've never used it. As your father says, death is life's greatest adventure, why skip to the last page? With ghoulish affection, Mother, your family knows Nicholas Flamel? Hermione had asked incredulously. The Addams family has been around for centuries, Harry explained. And they keep excellent records, especially of unusual magical practitioners. The knowledge that the Philosopher's Stone was hidden in Hogwarts, presumably guarded by enchantments including the three-headed dog, led them to suspect that someone was trying to steal it, with Snape as their prime suspect. Harry remained unconvinced. He helped place me with the Addams family. Why would he do that if he meant me harm? To keep tabs on you? Ron suggested. Or maybe he didn't expect them to raise you right. Define right, Harry said with a raised eyebrow. The climax came near the end of the school year when they discovered Hagrid had inadvertently revealed how to get past Fluffy to a stranger in a pub, coincidentally on the same day Dumbledore was called away to London. "We have to go down the trapdoor tonight," Harry told his friends. "Whoever's after the stone, Snape or someone else, will make their move while Dumbledore's away." That night, they slipped past a sleeping Fluffy, thanks to Hagrid's musical hint, dropped through the trapdoor, and faced a series of challenges clearly designed by the Hogwarts professors: Sprout's Devil's Snare, Flitwick's Flying Keys, McGonagall's giant chess set, and finally, Snape's logic puzzle guarding a doorway of fire. It was here that Hermione's brilliance and Harry's Addams-trained comfort with dangerous substances allowed them to identify the correct potion to pass through the flames. With only enough for one person, Harry continued alone, assuring his friends he'd be fine. "Death is an old friend of the family," he told them with a smile that was meant to be reassuring but seemed to worry them more. In the final chamber, Harry found not Snape, but Professor Quirrell, standing before the mirror of Eriste. "You!" Harry exclaimed. "But I thought, Snape." "Yes, Severus does seem the type, doesn't he?" Quirrell laughed, all trace of his stutter gone. Next to him, who would suspect P.P. Poor St. Stuttering P. Professor Quirrell? The revelation that Quirrell had been behind everything, jinxing Harry's broom, letting in the troll as a diversion, trying to steal the stone, was surprising but not shocking to Harry. The Addams family had taught him that appearances were often deceiving. What did shock him was the disembodied voice that seemed to come from Quirrell himself, demanding to speak to Harry face to face. When Quirrell unwrapped his turban, Harry found himself staring at the most terrible face he had ever seen, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. "Harry Potter," it whispered. "See what I have become. Mere shadow and vapor, forced to share another's body. But there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds." "Voldemort," Harry said calmly, his Addams upbringing allowing him to face the horrific spectre without flinching. "You speak my name." Voldemort sounded surprised. "You do not fear me?" "Mother says fear gives power to that which is feared," Harry replied. "I respect what you're capable of, but I don't fear you." Voldemort's eyes narrowed. "Your mother is dead, Potter." "Lily Potter died protecting me," Harry agreed. "Morticia Addams raised me to understand that death is not an ending, but a transformation." "Addams?" For the first time, Voldemort seemed caught off guard. "The ancient family of dark practitioners. They raised you." "They adopted me," Harry confirmed. "They taught me that darkness isn't good or evil, it's a force of nature, like death." Voldemort studied Harry with new interest. "Perhaps you understand more than I expected. Join me, Harry. With your upbringing and my power, we could accomplish extraordinary things." "I don't think our definitions of extraordinary align," Harry said. "You seek to conquer death. The Addams family has taught me to dance with it instead." The conversation was interrupted by Quirrell forcing Harry in front of the mirror of Eriste to find the stone. To his surprise, Harry saw his reflection reach into its pocket and pull out a blood-red stone. At the same moment, he felt the real stone drop into his own pocket. What followed was a desperate struggle as Quirrell attempted to seize the stone, only to discover he couldn't touch Harry without experiencing excruciating pain. Wherever their skin made contact, Quirrell's flesh burned and blistered. "Master, I cannot touch him!" Quirrell shrieked. "Then kill him and take the stone!" Voldemort screeched. As Quirrell lunged for Harry's throat, Harry instinctively grabbed Quirrell's face with his bare hands. The professor howled in agony, his skin smoking wherever Harry touched. Harry held on, ignoring his own blinding headache, understanding intuitively that this connection, painful as it was, represented some ancient magic at work. It reminded him of Morticia's lessons about blood rituals and sacrificial protection. "This is old magic," Harry gasped, even as the pain threatened to overwhelm him. "My mother's death, her sacrifice, it left its mark on me. Not just the scar, but a protection in my very skin." Voldemort screamed in rage as Quirrell's body crumbled beneath his servant's failing strength. The last thing Harry saw before losing consciousness was a smoky spectre rising from Quirrell's disintegrating form and passing through him like a ghost, leaving him shivering on the cold stone floor. Harry woke in the hospital wing, surrounded by a table piled high with candies and cards from well-wishers. Dumbledore sat beside his bed, looking pleased to see him awake. "Good afternoon, Harry," he said. "Your friends will be relieved. They've been quite concerned." "The stone," Harry began. "Safe. Nicholas and I had a little chat, and we've decided it's best destroyed." "But that means he and his wife will die, won't they?" Dumbledore looked surprised at Harry's matter-of-fact tone. "They have enough elixir to set their affairs in order." "But yes, they will die." "That's their choice," Harry nodded. "Mother says choosing your death, when possible, is a dignity everyone deserves." "Your adoptive mother has a unique perspective," Dumbledore observed. "I must confess, when I learned the Addams family had claimed you, I had concerns." "Because they practice old magic?" Harry asked. "Or because they embrace darkness?" "Both, perhaps," Dumbledore admitted. "But I begin to see the wisdom in their approach, particularly regarding death. It was your mother's sacrifice that protected you from Voldemort, and your understanding of that sacrifice that allowed you to face him without fear." "Not just without fear," Harry corrected. "With respect for what he represents, even if I disagree with his methods. Death comes for everyone eventually. Fighting against that natural order creates more suffering than acceptance." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "A profound philosophy for one so young. I believe your unique upbringing may prove to be one of our greatest advantages in the challenges ahead." Their conversation turned to why Quirrell couldn't touch Harry, the protection left by Lily's sacrifice, fueled by love, and Dumbledore's decision to place Harry with the Addams family. "I initially intended for you to grow up with your aunt and uncle," Dumbledore confessed. "I believed the blood protection would be strongest there, despite their limitations." "You mean their hatred of magic," Harry said bluntly. "Yes," Dumbledore sighed. "When Morticia Addams appeared, claiming a distant blood relation and magical right, I was skeptical. It was Professor Snape who convinced me." "Snape?" Harry was surprised. "Why would he advocate for me?" "That," Dumbledore said gently, "is his story to tell, should he choose to. But I believe he recognized that the Addams family, unusual as they are, would never reject a child for having magical talent." As their conversation concluded, Harry asked one final question. "Sir, do you think Voldemort will return?" "I believe he will try, Harry. There are ways for those who are determined enough to cling to life, even without a proper body." "Then we'll meet again," Harry said with certainty. "And next time, perhaps I can help him understand what Mother has taught me, that there are worse things than death. Like living in fear of it." The end-of-year feast featured Gryffindor winning the House Cup, thanks to last-minute points awarded to Harry, Ron, and Hermione for their bravery with the stone. As Hagrid saw them off at Hogsmeade Station, he gave Harry a leather-bound album full of wizarding photographs of his birth parents. "Sent owls to all your parents' old school friends, asked for photos," Hagrid explained gruffly. "Knew ya didn't have any." "Thank you, Hagrid," Harry said, deeply moved. "This means everything to me. Mother, Morticia, has always encouraged me to honor my birth parents. This will help me know them better." As the Hogwarts Express pulled away from the station, Harry gazed out at the castle one last time. "Everything all right, Harry?" Hermione asked, noticing his pensive look. "Better than all right," Harry smiled. "I was just thinking how fortunate I am to have so many families, my birth parents who loved me enough to die for me, the Addams family who taught me that death isn't something to fear, and now Hogwarts, which feels like another kind of home." "You're mental, mate," Ron said fondly. "But in a good way." Harry laughed. "Mother would take that as a compliment." As the train rounded a bend, taking Hogwarts out of sight, Harry settled back in his seat, looking forward to the summer. The Addams mansion awaited, with its sentient plants, explosive experiments, and macabre celebrations. And beyond that, another year at Hogwarts, with whatever adventures it might bring. He touched his scar thoughtfully. Voldemort would return, he was certain. But when he did, he would find Harry Potter Addams waiting, a boy who had been taught that death was beautiful and therefore could not be threatened by it. It would be, Harry thought with a smile Morticia would have approved of, an interesting confrontation indeed. Chapter 2, Darkness recognizes darkness. The summer at the Addams mansion flew by in a flurry of explosions, midnight graveyard picnics, and magical experiments that would have given the Ministry's improper use of magic office collective heart failure. Harry's 12th birthday celebration involved the entire family descending into the ancient catacombs beneath the property for what Gomez called the traditional Addams blindfolded maze challenge. Nothing builds character like navigating unseen dangers. He declared, tying a black silk blindfold around Harry's eyes before spinning him 3 times and setting him loose among the bone-lined tunnels. Harry emerged 4 hours later, covered in cobwebs and grinning broadly, having successfully navigated the labyrinth using only touch, sound, and the peculiar sixth sense the Addams family had nurtured in him. 16 minutes faster than last year. Morticia had noted proudly, checking the ancient stopwatch. Your sensitivity to the whispers of the departed is improving splendidly. Now, standing on platform 9 3/4 for his second year at Hogwarts, Harry felt a strange mix of excitement and reluctance. The Addams mansion had been particularly lively this summer with Grandmama's experimental potions causing temporary transformations among family members, and Wednesday perfecting a new crossbow design that fired miniature explosives. Remember what we discussed about the family gift, Morticia said, straightening Harry's slightly unconventional school tie, black silk rather than the standard issue. If it manifests this year, embrace it naturally. I will, Mother, Harry promised. The Addams family believed magical talents often emerged around the onset of puberty, particularly those connected to their ancestral bloodlines. Your cousins will be jealous, Wednesday commented flatly. I've been trying to talk to snakes for years. We don't know if that's what it will be, Harry reminded her. The signs are there, Morticia said knowingly. The garden vipers following you through the greenhouse, the cobra that refused to strike during Grandmama's venom collection. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Weasleys, a chaotic whirlwind of red hair and frantic energy that contrasted sharply with the Addams' composed darkness. Harry! Ron called, pushing his trolley toward them. Been looking everywhere. Mrs. Weasley followed, slightly out of breath. She stopped short upon seeing Morticia, her eyes widening slightly. You must be Harry's adoptive mother, she said, recovering admirably. Molly Weasley. Ron's told us all about Harry, of course. Morticia Addams, Morticia replied with her characteristic smooth grace. Charmed, I'm sure. She extended a pale hand which Mrs. Weasley shook after only the briefest hesitation. Arthur's had a bit of trouble at the Ministry this morning, Mrs. Weasley explained. Something about a flying car. Boys, you'd better board quickly. As Harry said his goodbyes, Gomez pressed a small package into his hand. A little something for emergencies, he winked. Your great-uncle Vlad's collapsible escape coffin. Fits in your pocket, expands to full size when needed. Thanks, Father, Harry grinned, pocketing the gift. The train journey started uneventfully enough, with Harry and Ron claiming a compartment and being joined by Hermione, who launched immediately into tales of her educational summer reading. I've been practicing some second-year spells already, she announced. Have you done any magic over the holidays, Harry? Some, Harry acknowledged vaguely, thinking of the midnight ritual where Grandmama had taught him to draw power from moonlight reflected in blood. The Ministry detection spells never seemed to register magic performed at the Addams mansion, something about ancient wards and loopholes in magical law that Gomez had explained with gleeful pride. Their reunion was interrupted when they realized Ron's younger sister Ginny wasn't with them. A quick search of the train proved fruitless. She was right behind me on the platform, Ron said worriedly. When they finally arrived at Hogsmeade Station without locating Ginny, Harry had a sinking feeling. "Your father mentioned a flying car." Ron's eyes widened. She wouldn't. But as the evening edition of the Daily Prophet would later confirm, Ginny Weasley had indeed taken her father's enchanted Ford Anglia for an unauthorized flight to Hogwarts, crash-landing spectacularly into the Whomping Willow. "She's always been the impulsive one," Ron groaned as they watched Ginny receiving a spectacular howler from Mrs. Weasley the following morning at breakfast. "Mum's going mental." Harry, who found the incident rather impressive, offered Ginny an encouraging smile. "The Addams family has a saying, it's not the crash that defines you, but how dramatically you emerge from the wreckage." Ginny, face still flaming to match her hair, managed a small smile in return. Classes resumed with familiar rhythm. Professor McGonagall seemed determined to increase the complexity of their transfiguration work exponentially. Professor Flitwick had them practicing the Scourge charm to remove ectoplasmic residue, something Harry had been doing at home for years, given the mansion's ghostly inhabitants. Defense against the dark arts had a new teacher, Gilderoy Lockhart, whose blindingly white smile and peacock-colored robes made Harry think of the cursed music box in the Addams attic that played cheerful tunes while slowly driving listeners insane. "Can you believe our luck?" Ron groaned as they entered Lockhart's classroom. "Fred and George say he's a complete fraud." Their first lesson confirmed these suspicions when Lockhart released a cage of Cornish pixies into the classroom, then fled when they went wild, leaving Harry, Ron, and Hermione to deal with the chaos. "Immobilis." Hermione cast, freezing the pixies in midair. Harry, who had been observing with interest rather than panic, reached out and let one of the frozen pixies rest on his finger. "They're quite beautiful up close," he noted. "Like tiny blue demons. Pugsley would love them." "Only you would think that," Ron muttered, nursing a bitten ear. As September progressed, Harry began hearing something disturbing, a voice, cold and murderous, that no one else seemed to hear. It spoke of killing and hunger, and seemed to move within the walls themselves. "You don't hear it?" he asked Ron and Hermione as they left nearly headless Nick's Death Day party on Halloween. "Hear what, mate?" Ron looked concerned. Harry listened intently. "There it is again. It's moving. I think it's going to kill someone." He took off running, following the voice until they reached a flooded corridor on the second floor. There, suspended by her tail from a torch bracket, hung Mrs. Norris, Filch's cat, stiff as a board. On the wall behind her, foot-high words gleamed against the stone, "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware." "We should go," Hermione whispered urgently. "We don't want to be found here." But before they could move, students flooded the corridor from the Halloween feast, followed by teachers. Chaos erupted as Filch accused Harry of killing his cat, and Dumbledore intervened, declaring Mrs. Norris petrified, not dead. Later, in the safety of the Gryffindor common room, Harry revealed the voice he'd heard. "A voice no one else can hear doesn't sound good, Harry," Hermione said worriedly. "Even in the wizarding world. Mother says unusual perceptions often indicate latent magical gifts," Harry replied thoughtfully. "Though I don't know what hearing murderous voices would signify." "Nothing good, that's what," Ron muttered. The attack on Mrs. Norris sparked wild rumors throughout the school. The legend of the Chamber of Secrets, Salazar Slytherin's hidden chamber containing a monster that would purge the school of those unworthy to study magic, spread like wildfire. "They're saying you're Slytherin's heir," Hermione told Harry worriedly. "Because you were found at the scene." Harry found this more amusing than concerning. "The Addams family does claim connection to several of the darkest wizarding bloodlines in Europe," he acknowledged. "Though I'm not aware of a direct link to Slytherin." Ron stared at him. "You're not actually considering it could be true?" Harry shrugged. "Magical heritage is complicated. Mother has always encouraged me to embrace whatever bloodline gifts might manifest." His casual acceptance of potentially being related to Slytherin unnerved his friends, but Harry had been raised to view magical legacies, dark or light, as natural birthright rather than moral indicators. The true test came during their first dueling club meeting, when Draco Malfoy conjured a snake during his duel with Harry. As the serpent advanced on Justin Finch-Fletchley, Harry spoke without thinking. "Leave him alone," he commanded. The snake stopped instantly, slumping docilely to the floor. Harry looked up, expecting relief, only to find the entire hall staring at him in horror, except for Snape, whose expression held something closer to calculation. "What are you playing at?" Justin demanded before fleeing the hall. "You're a Parselmouth," Ron hissed as they left. "Why didn't you tell us?" "A what?" Harry asked, confused. "A Parselmouth, you can talk to snakes." Ron looked around nervously. "It's really rare, Harry. And not a good sign. Salazar Slytherin was famous for it." "That's why everyone thinks you're his heir," Hermione added quietly. Harry absorbed this information with dawning comprehension. That's what Mother meant about the family gift manifesting. "Last summer, I thought the garden snakes were just being friendly, but I must have been speaking to them without realizing it." "Friendly?" Ron looked aghast. "You found this out and thought, oh, cool, snake friends." "The Addams family considers communication with creatures of darkness a blessing," Harry explained. "Grandmother Frump could call bats from 3 counties away." Hermione studied him. "So you didn't know it was unusual?" "I knew it was special," Harry clarified. "Just not that it was considered dark." The school's reaction was immediate and severe. Students scattered when Harry approached in corridors. Whispers followed him everywhere. Even Hufflepuffs, normally the most accepting house, eyed him with suspicion. That weekend, Harry wrote to Morticia, "Dear Mother, the family gift has manifested, as you predicted. I can speak to snakes, it's called Parseltongue." Unfortunately, the ability is viewed with suspicion here, as it was Salazar Slytherin's famous trait. A series of attacks has the school on edge, and many believe I'm responsible because of this ability. Would our family records indicate any connection to Slytherin? While I'm not concerned about such a heritage, it might help to know. Give my love to everyone. Your son, Harry. Morticia's response arrived promptly by raven rather than owl, the Addams family's preferred messenger for important communications. My darling Harry, how wonderful about your Parseltongue ability. The family is ecstatic. Wednesday is particularly envious and has been practicing by hissing at garden snakes for hours. They seem terrified, which she counts as progress. Regarding Salazar Slytherin, our family grimoires show no direct lineage connection, though there was an interesting liaison between Desdemona Addams and Slytherin's grandson around 1100 AD. The relationship produced no documented offspring, but Desdemona's diary mentions a parting gift that flows in the blood. Make of that what you will. More relevantly, Parseltongue has appeared in several dark wizarding families across Europe. Our own line has shown it sporadically, most notably in your great-great-grandfather Alphonse, who maintained fascinating conversations with a basilisk during his tenure at Durmstrang. His notes on basilisk behavior are in the family library, should you wish to review them during the winter holidays. As for the attacks, how intriguing. A true mystery begging to be unraveled. Remember what your father always says, when accused of darkness, don't deny your shadow, dance with it. The family sends their love and a small package of Wednesday's latest explosive experiments, for emergencies only. With macabre affection, Mother P.S. Your father suggests that if there truly is a chamber of secrets, you should document the architectural details. He's always been fascinated by hidden rooms that unleash ancient horrors. Harry folded the letter with a mix of amusement and relief. The Addams perspective was exactly what he needed, a reminder that his abilities were something to celebrate rather than hide, regardless of others' reactions. Unfortunately, the attacks continued. First Justin Finch-Fletchley and nearly headless Nick were found petrified, then later, Hermione herself became a victim while researching in the library. Seeing Hermione's rigid form in the hospital wing, Harry felt a surge of determination unlike anything he'd experienced before. The casual Addams' acceptance of darkness was one thing when it involved consensual family rituals, but quite another when it threatened people he cared about. "I have to find the chamber," he told Ron. "Whatever's doing this, whoever's controlling it, they've gone too far." Their breakthrough came when Harry found a small diary among Moaning Myrtle's flooded bathroom belongings, a 50-year-old journal belonging to someone named T.M. Riddle. When the diary began writing back to Harry, revealing the alleged culprit behind attacks that had occurred 50 years prior, Harry's Addams-honed instincts sensed deception. "It's too eager to help," he told Ron. "Objects that think for themselves never show all their cards at once." Great Aunt Calpurnia's music box played only pleasant melodies until it gained your trust, then it would whisper instructions for removing your own fingernails. Harry's suspicions proved correct when Ginny Weasley was taken into the chamber itself, with a new message: her skeleton will lie in the chamber forever. Using Myrtle's reluctant help to locate the chamber's entrance in her bathroom, Harry and Ron, accompanied by a thoroughly useless Lockhart, descended into the ancient tunnel system beneath the school. When a tunnel collapse separated Harry from the others, he continued alone into the heart of Slytherin's chamber, a vast stone space lined with serpentine columns and dominated by a massive statue of Salazar Slytherin himself. At the statue's feet lay Ginny, pale and still, with the diary clutched in her limp fingers. Beside her stood a handsome teenage boy who introduced himself as Tom Riddle, the preserved memory of the young Lord Voldemort. "She's been writing in my diary for months," Riddle explained, twirling Ginny's wand between his fingers. "Pouring her soul into me, allowing me to pour a little of my soul back into her. I've been controlling her, making her open the chamber and set the basilisk on Muggleborns." "A basilisk?" Harry asked, his mind racing to great-great-grandfather Alphonse's notes. "That's the monster in the chamber." "Indeed," Riddle smiled coldly. "Only you can hear it because you understand Parseltongue, just as I do. We're connected, Harry Potter, in ways you cannot imagine." As Riddle revealed his identity as the younger version of Voldemort, Harry listened with calm curiosity that seemed to unnerve the older boy. When Riddle finally called forth the basilisk from Slytherin's statue, Harry did something unexpected. Instead of running or closing his eyes, he spoke to it in Parseltongue. "Great serpent," he hissed. "I too am a speaker, blood of your master's blood." The enormous snake paused, its huge head swaying uncertainly. "Kill him," Riddle commanded furiously in Parseltongue. "He is not your true master," Harry continued, keeping his gaze fixed on the basilisk's scales rather than its deadly eyes. "He is memory and fragment, not whole. I live and breathe before you." The basilisk hesitated, tongue flicking rapidly to taste the air between Harry and Riddle. "Impossible," Riddle snarled. "I am the heir of Slytherin." "And yet the serpent doubts," Harry replied in English. "Creatures of true darkness recognize authenticity, Tom. My family taught me that. You may speak the language, but you've fractured your soul too many times to command its loyalty completely." It wasn't a total victory, the basilisk still advanced on Harry at Riddle's increasingly frantic commands, but the crucial moment of hesitation allowed Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, to swoop in and blind the great serpent, giving Harry a fighting chance. The battle that followed was chaotic. Harry evaded the blinded basilisk through the chamber's network of pipes, eventually confronting it with the ruby-encrusted sword of Gryffindor that Fawkes had delivered from the Sorting Hat. As the basilisk lunged one final time, Harry drove the sword up through the roof of its mouth, but not before one poisoned fang sank deeply into his arm. Harry staggered back to where Ginny lay, the broken fang clutched in his uninjured hand. Riddle was laughing, gloating over Harry's imminent death from the basilisk venom. "Poison," Harry murmured, oddly calm despite the fiery pain spreading from the wound. "Grandmama would be fascinated by its potency." "You're dying, Potter," Riddle said, gleeful. "Even your strange upbringing can't save you from basilisk venom." Harry looked at the diary, then at the fang in his hand. With sudden clarity, he plunged the fang directly into the diary's cover. Ink spurted from the book like blood, and Riddle screamed, his form writhing and disintegrating as the diary was destroyed. Ginny stirred, color returning to her cheeks. The phoenix's tears healed Harry's wound, their magical healing properties neutralizing the basilisk venom. As Harry helped Ginny to her feet, he cast one last look at the magnificent creature he'd been forced to kill. "I'm sorry it came to this," he hissed softly in Parseltongue. "You deserved better than to be a weapon." "You spoke to it?" Dumbledore asked later in his office, after Harry had explained everything. "The basilisk actually hesitated at your command?" Briefly, Harry acknowledged. "Mother says creatures of ancient magic respond to bloodline recognition. I don't have Slytherin's blood, but I do have the Addams heritage, which has its own connection to serpents." Dumbledore studied Harry thoughtfully. "Your perspective on these events is unique, Harry. Most would see only a monster to be slain." "All creatures deserve understanding before judgment," Harry replied, repeating one of Morticia's frequent teachings. "Even those with the power to kill." "A compassionate view," Dumbledore observed. "And the diary? You recognized its nature?" "It felt wrong," Harry explained. "Like something that had been unnaturally divided. The Addams family has several artifacts with consciousness, but they maintain a certain integrity. This felt fractured." Dumbledore's eyes sharpened with interest. "Fractured, you say?" Like a soul piece without its whole, Harry tried to articulate what his instincts had registered. Grandmother's spirit board once contacted a ghost that had splintered itself across 5 different haunting sites. It had the same discordant energy. After discussing Voldemort's past identity as Tom Riddle and the significance of Harry's choices in the chamber, Dumbledore dismissed him with a final observation: "Your Addams upbringing continues to surprise me, Harry. What might have been intended to create another dark wizard has instead fostered a unique understanding of darkness that may prove to be Voldemort's undoing." Summer arrived with a flurry of exams and the reinstatement of those who had been petrified. Hermione's return from the hospital wing was celebrated with a specially modified version of an Addams awakening ritual that Harry performed secretly, involving candles and an offering of knowledge, in this case, his complete transfiguration notes. "Did you really talk to the basilisk?" Hermione asked as they packed their trunks on the final day. "I tried," Harry replied. It was confused, torn between responding to a Parselmouth and obeying Riddle's commands. "And you felt sorry for it," she observed, not a question. Harry nodded. "It was a magnificent creature, ancient and powerful. It didn't choose to be sealed away as a weapon." Hermione shook her head with a half-smile. "Only you, Harry. Anyone else would have nightmares for years." "Oh, I expect I will," Harry said cheerfully. "But as Uncle Fester says, the best nightmares are the ones you've earned through worthy encounters with the abyss." "Your family has the strangest sayings," Ron commented as he struggled to close his overflowing trunk. "Wait until you hear the ones in Latin," Harry grinned. Harry's 13th summer began with a landmark Addams celebration, the resurrection of Great-Uncle Cosmo's spirit through the family's centennial séance. The entire extended Addams clan gathered for the event, with relatives arriving from as far as the Romanian Carpathian fortress and the ancestral swamplands of Louisiana. "You've grown, young Raven," Grandmama Frump cackled, pinching Harry's cheek with bony fingers. "Getting the Addams cheekbones at last." The séance itself was spectacular, with Great-Uncle Cosmo materializing in a tornado of ectoplasm and immediately launching into a critique of modern grave design, too shallow. "In my day, we buried them deep enough to make resurrection a real challenge." The family festivities were interrupted one morning by the arrival of the Daily Prophet, bearing the screaming headline, "Escape from Azkaban. Sirius Black at large." Sirius Black. Harry read with interest. "Any relation to Mother's family?" "My second cousin," Morticia confirmed, examining the gaunt, hollowed face in the newspaper photograph. "The last of the direct black line. They say he betrayed your parents to Voldemort. And now he's escaped a supposedly inescapable prison," Gomez added with undisguised admiration. "Magnificent determination. Of course, if he shows up here seeking to harm you, we'll have to disembowel him as a matter of family honor." Of course, Harry agreed, accustomed to such declarations. But I'd like to hear his story first. Mother always says accusations are often simplified versions of complex truths. Morticia looked pleased. How perceptive, my darling. The Black family has a complicated history with dark allegiances. Not unlike our own. The implications of Black's escape became clearer when Mr. Weasley pulled Harry aside at the Leaky Cauldron the night before returning to Hogwarts. Harry had been permitted to spend the final week of holidays with the Weasleys, after extracting a promise from Mrs. Weasley that she wouldn't confiscate Wednesday's farewell gift of minimally lethal, exploding quills. Harry, there's something you need to know, Mr. Weasley said gravely. The Ministry believes Sirius Black escaped to find you. To finish what Voldemort started. Harry guessed. Mr. Weasley flinched at the name but nodded. Promise me you won't go looking for Black. Harry considered this request. The Addams family never made promises they didn't intend to keep. I promise not to seek him out without reasonable precautions, he offered as compromise. Mr. Weasley looked unsatisfied but accepted this as the best he'd get. The journey to Hogwarts brought Harry's first encounter with Dementors, the soul-sucking guards of Azkaban who boarded the train searching for Sirius Black. As the compartment temperature plunged and frost crept across the windows, Harry experienced something unexpected. Unlike his friends, who felt crushing despair, Harry sensed the creatures differently. Yes, there was cold and a pulling sensation at his core, but also a strange recognition, as if the entities of death and darkness acknowledged something kindred in him. Curious, he whispered, even as the screams of Lily Potter echoed distantly in his mind. When the compartment door slid open to reveal a towering, hooded figure, Harry stood up rather than shrinking back. The Dementor paused, its rattling breath catching momentarily as if confused. You seek the living, but find one touched by death, Harry said softly, remembering Morticia's teachings about confronting dark entities. I am not your quarry. The Dementor hovered, seemingly uncertain, until Professor Lupin, the new defense against the dark arts teacher who had been sleeping in their compartment, awoke and cast a silvery patronus charm that drove the creature away. Remarkable, Lupin commented after reviving Harry, who had finally succumbed to the Dementor's effects. Most people cower from Dementors. You spoke to it. Mother says entities of darkness respond to confident acknowledgement, Harry explained, accepting the chocolate Lupin offered. Though I admit, its effect was stronger than I anticipated. You heard Lily, didn't you? Lupin asked quietly. Your mother's final moments. Harry looked up sharply. You knew her. I knew both your parents, Lupin admitted with a sad smile. We were friends at Hogwarts. Including. He hesitated, Sirius Black. This connection to his birth parents and their betrayer fascinated Harry, but before he could question Lupin further, the professor excused himself to speak with the train driver. At the welcoming feast, Dumbledore announced that Dementors would be stationed around Hogwarts until Sirius Black was captured, a security measure that made Harry frown thoughtfully. Creatures that fed on happiness seemed a high price for security. Professor Lupin proved to be an excellent defense teacher, providing practical lessons on dark creatures that Harry found refreshingly straightforward compared to the previous year's Lockhart fiasco. When they faced a boggart, a shapeshifter that transformed into one's greatest fear, Harry was curious what form his would take. Perhaps Lord Voldemort, he wondered aloud to Ron before the lesson. But when Harry stepped forward, the boggart shifted into something unexpected, not Voldemort, nor death itself, but a tall mirror that reflected Harry completely alone, abandoned by both his birth family and the Addamses, belonging nowhere. Fascinating, Harry breathed, momentarily thrown by the insight into his own psyche. Ridiculous, he cast, transforming the mirror into one from a funhouse, where his distorted reflection was surrounded by the wildly stretched images of both his families, all waving enthusiastically. Interesting fear, Lupin noted after class. Not death or pain, but isolation. The Addams family taught me death isn't fearsome, Harry explained. But losing connection to those you love, that's truly terrifying. As Halloween approached, the third years eagerly anticipated their first Hogsmeade weekend. Harry, however, faced disappointment when McGonagall refused to sign his permission form due to the Sirius Black threat, despite Morticia's elaborate signature complete with what appeared to be actual blood ink. "The signature is quite distinctive, Mr. Potter, but without guardian presence to verify, I cannot make an exception," McGonagall explained, eyeing the parchment warily. Left behind at the castle, Harry was wandering the corridors when Professor Lupin invited him for tea. "Your reaction to the Dementors is unusual," Lupin observed as they sat in his office. "Most people experience only fear and despair." "I felt that," Harry acknowledged, "but also something like recognition. Mother says those touched by death carry a signature that death's agents can sense." "Your adoptive mother has interesting theories," Lupin commented carefully. "The Addams family is known for their unconventional approach to dark magic." "Not dark," Harry corrected automatically. "Old. There's a difference." Lupin smiled slightly. "So I've heard you say. Your birth mother would have appreciated the distinction." Lily was remarkably nuanced in her understanding of magic. Their conversation was interrupted by Snape's arrival with a steaming goblet of what Harry recognized as wolfsbane potion, a revelation that confirmed his growing suspicion about Lupin's monthly illnesses coinciding with the full moon. After Snape departed with a meaningful glare, Harry spoke carefully. "That potion is for managing lycanthropy, isn't it?" Lupin froze, cup halfway to his lips. "How did you?" "Grandmama makes it occasionally for a client in Transylvania," Harry explained. "The aconite smell is distinctive. Plus, your absences follow the lunar cycle." Instead of fear, Harry's expression showed only curiosity. "The Addams family has always considered werewolves fascinating rather than frightening. Great-uncle Vlad ran with a pack in the Carpathian Mountains every summer solstice." Lupin's shock gave way to cautious relief. "Most people would be terrified." Harry shrugged. "Transformation isn't something to fear. It's just another expression of magic's fundamental nature." This conversation established a deeper bond between them, leading to Lupin agreeing to teach Harry the Patronus charm to defend against Dementors, a decision accelerated after Harry fell from his broom during a Quidditch match when Dementors invaded the pitch. "Think of your happiest memory," Lupin instructed during their first lesson, facing a boggart-turned Dementor in an old trunk. Harry tried several, his first day at Hogwarts, winning the Quidditch Cup, before settling on something deeper, the night Morticia had formally completed his adoption ritual, declaring him, blood of our blood, shadow of our shadow, an Addams in magic and spirit. Expecto Patronum, he cast, and a silver mist erupted from his wand, temporarily holding the boggart Dementor at bay. "Excellent for a first attempt," Lupin praised. "Though I admit, I'm curious what constitutes a happy memory in an Addams household." Harry described the midnight ritual, complete with ceremonial candles and ancestral invocations. "Not what most would consider cheerful," Lupin noted with a raised eyebrow. "Happiness isn't about sunshine and sweets," Harry replied. "It's about belonging and acceptance. The Addamses gave me that completely, darkness and all." The true test of Harry's Patronus came unexpectedly during a Quidditch match against Ravenclaw. When what appeared to be Dementors glided onto the field, Harry reacted instinctively, casting a fully formed Patronus that charged the figures, revealing them to be Draco Malfoy and his cronies on stilts, wearing black robes. A corporeal Patronus, Lupin marveled afterward. Taking the form of, was that a raven? A raven for the young raven, Harry smiled, using Morticia's pet name for him. "Mother will be pleased." The year's defining moment came during Harry's divination exam. As Professor Trelawney gripped his hands across the crystal ball, her voice changed, becoming harsh and deep as she delivered a prophecy about Voldemort's servant breaking free to rejoin his master. That same evening, the trio discovered the truth about Sirius Black, that he had been falsely accused of betraying the Potters, while the real traitor, Peter Pettigrew, had faked his death and lived as Ron's pet rat, Scabbers, for 12 years. The confrontation in the Shrieking Shack revealed long-buried truths as Sirius and Lupin forced Pettigrew to resume human form and confess. When Pettigrew begged for mercy, appealing to each of them in turn, he found Harry's response most unsettling. "You speak of mercy," Harry said, studying Pettigrew with detached interest, "yet you sentence 2 people to death out of cowardice. Mother says betrayal creates a debt that transcends ordinary morality." What does that mean?" Pettigrew squeaked, shrinking from Harry's calm assessment. "It means," Harry explained, "that while I won't kill you, I believe justice requires acknowledgement of natural consequences. You should face the Ministry and the Dementors." This mature perspective impressed Sirius, who found himself reassessing his godson. "You're not what I expected, Harry." James was impulsive, Lily compassionate. "You're something else entirely." "I'm an Addams," Harry replied simply. "We see the world differently." Their plan to deliver Pettigrew to justice unraveled when the full moon triggered Lupin's transformation. In the ensuing chaos, Pettigrew escaped, and Sirius, weakened from years in Azkaban, was overwhelmed by Dementors at the lake's edge. Harry and Hermione, armed with Dumbledore's cryptic suggestion and a time-turner Hermione had been using to attend extra classes, traveled 3 hours into the past to save both Sirius and Buckbeak the Hippogriff from unjust fates. As hundreds of Dementors closed in on past Harry and Sirius, present Harry cast his patronus, not from a single happy memory this time, but from the accumulated sense of belonging he'd found with both his families. The silver raven erupted from his wand, larger and more brilliant than before, scattering the Dementors like smoke in wind. "I knew I could do it," Harry explained to a stunned Hermione, "because I'd already seen myself succeed." With Buckbeak's help, they rescued Sirius, who prepared to flee into hiding until Pettigrew could be captured and his name cleared. "You truly are your mother's son," Sirius told Harry during their brief farewell. "Not just Lily, but Morticia too. I've heard stories about the Addams family since I was a child. My own family, the Blacks, considered them both admirable and terrifying. You should visit the mansion when you're able," Harry invited. "Mother would enjoy meeting another Black family member who defied expectations. We have a lovely guest dungeon that's hardly been used this century." Sirius barked a laugh. "I believe you're serious, which makes it even better. Write to me, will you?" "Of course," Harry promised. "Hedwig can find you, and the family ravens are even better at locating people who don't want to be found." Before departing Hogwarts for summer, Harry had one final conversation with Lupin, who had resigned after his werewolf status became public knowledge. "You don't seem concerned that I could have bitten any of you," Lupin noted as he packed his office. "Transformation isn't inherently evil," Harry replied. "Mother says all magic has the potential for beauty or horror depending on context and control." Lupin studied him thoughtfully. "Your perspective is refreshing, Harry. Most wizards see only categories, dark or light, safe or dangerous. You see spectrums. The Addams family exists in the shadows between," Harry explained. "We recognize darkness without fearing it." Harry's 4th year began with an invitation to the Quidditch World Cup, courtesy of the Weasleys. Morticia and Gomez, enthusiastic about Harry experiencing wizarding culture beyond Hogwarts, agreed readily, though not without sending along a protective amulet that family legend claimed could deflect curses while amplifying one's natural affinity for chaos. The World Cup itself was spectacular, with Ireland's victory over Bulgaria despite Victor Crumb's snitch capture. The celebration afterward, however, turned sinister when Death Eaters, Voldemort's former supporters, rampaged through the campsite, levitating the Muggle groundskeeper's family for sport. In the chaos that followed, Harry became separated from the others. While searching for his friends, he encountered a house elf behaving strangely in the woods, followed by a man who cast a terrifying symbol into the sky, the Dark Mark, Voldemort's sign. When Ministry officials arrived, firing stunning spells in all directions, Harry ducked instinctively, avoiding being hit. The ensuing investigation revealed the house elf, Winky, holding Harry's wand, which had been used to conjure the Dark Mark. "Your wand, Potter." Mr. Crouch demanded suspiciously. Yes, Harry confirmed. It disappeared during the panic. And you didn't cast this? Crouch pressed, gesturing to the glittering skull and serpent overhead. No, though it's an impressive bit of spell work, Harry observed analytically. Mother says symbolic magic gains power through historical association and emotional response. The ministry officials exchanged uncomfortable glances at Harry's academic interest in what most considered a symbol of pure terror. Back at the Addams mansion for the remainder of summer, Harry found the family enthralled by his account of the Death Eater attack. Masks and dark robes? Gomez mused. Derivative, but classic. The dark mark is rather inspired, Morticia added, examining Harry's sketch. The serpent emerging from the skull creates a compelling metaphor for death birthing power. If they weren't targeting innocent people, they'd almost have Addams' aesthetic sense, Wednesday noted, looking up from the medieval thumbscrew she was polishing. That's the difference, Harry agreed. Aesthetics without ethics becomes mere terrorism. Great Aunt Calpurnia's grimoire calls it, the hollow performance of darkness without its wisdom. Returning to Hogwarts brought the announcement of the Triwizard Tournament, a legendary competition between Hogwarts, Beauxbatons, and Durmstrang that hadn't been held in centuries due to its high death toll. They're reviving a tournament famous for killing its participants. Harry grinned. Grandmama would approve. Only this time there'll be safety measures, Hermione pointed out. And an age restriction, no one under 17. Reasonable, Harry nodded. Though Mother says the most educational risks are the ones you choose consciously rather than stumble into accidentally. The arrival of the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang delegations added international flavor to Hogwarts. Harry was particularly interested in the Durmstrang students, given their school's reputation for teaching dark arts rather than just defense against them. Is it true you study actual dark magic? He asked Victor Crumb one evening in the library. Or just older forms that British wizards have classified as dark? Crumb looked surprised at the question's nuance. Mostly the second. Traditional magics that Western Europe abandoned during the Reformation. Your British ministry calls many ancient practices dark simply because they involve blood or invoke death. That's what my family says, Harry nodded. Mother maintains that magic classified as dark often simply acknowledges natural cycles and forces that modern wizards prefer to ignore. Your mother sounds wise, Crumb said. Few British wizards understand this perspective. Their conversation established a rapport that survived even the shocking events of Halloween night, when the Goblet of Fire selected champions for each school, Cedric Diggory for Hogwarts, Fleur Delacour for Beauxbatons, and Victor Crumb for Durmstrang, before unexpectedly ejecting a fourth name, Harry Potter. The uproar was immediate. Though Harry insisted he hadn't entered himself, the magically binding contract forced his participation despite being 3 years younger than the other champions. Did you ask an older student to enter for you? Hermione demanded later in the Gryffindor common room. No, Harry said truthfully. Though I admit, the tournament does sound like something the Addams family would consider excellent education. Excellent education. Ron exploded, breaking his sullen silence. People have died in this tournament. Death is always a possibility in worthwhile endeavors, Harry shrugged. Mother says, not everything is about what your creepy family thinks. Ron interrupted. Some of us actually worry about dying. The outburst created a rift between them that wouldn't heal for weeks, with Ron joining many students in believing Harry had somehow cheated to enter the tournament. Harry wrote to Morticia about the development. Dear Mother, I've been mysteriously entered into the Triwizard Tournament despite the age restriction. The magical contract is binding, so I must compete alongside champions 3 years my senior. The first task involves facing the unknown, so preparation is challenging. Ron believes I entered myself seeking glory. While I understand his perspective, it's disappointing. Hermione remains supportive, if worried. Any advice from family grimoires regarding magical contracts or facing unknown magical challenges would be appreciated. Your son, Harry. Morticia's reply arrived by express raven the next morning, my dearest Harry, what thrilling news. The family is ecstatic about your selection for this legendary tournament. Pugsley is beside himself with envy and has been trying to mail himself to Hogwarts in protest. Regarding magical contracts, they respond to intent as much as action. While you must participate, the contract only specifies participation, not victory. Remember Great Uncle Vlad's dictum, when bound by external magic, fulfill the letter while subverting the spirit. As for facing the unknown, Addams family tradition holds that unknown challenges are best met by diversifying your approach. Your father suggests carrying multiple magical tools, not just your wand, but perhaps your ritual athame, a vial of graveyard soil from our family plot, enclosed, and Wednesday's explosive quills. Most importantly, remember that spectacle has power. Addamses face death with style. Whatever the challenge, approach it with the family's characteristic blend of macabre appreciation and unflinching resolve. The entire family will be following your progress. Grandmama is organizing a special séance to channel supportive energy from our ancestors during each task. With darkest affection, Mother P.S. Your father has placed several substantial wagers on your survival with some goblin bookmakers. Do try not to disappoint, you know how he gets about gambling debts. The letter bolstered Harry's spirits considerably. While the rest of the school vacillated between treating him as either a cheater or a celebrity, Harry focused on preparing for the tournament with Hermione's help and occasional input from Professor Moody, the new defense against the dark arts teacher. Harry's preparations took on an Addams flavor. Alongside learning standard spells and jinxes, he practiced meditation techniques Morticia had taught him for maintaining calm in death-adjacent situations, and carried the vial of family graveyard soil as a focus for centering exercises. When Hagrid secretly showed Harry that the first task involved dragons, Harry's reaction differed markedly from what might be expected. Magnificent, he breathed, watching the handlers struggling with a particularly ferocious Hungarian horntail. Grandmama always said dragons represent the perfect blend of elemental destructive power and evolutionary perfection. You're not scared? Hagrid asked, surprised. Terrified, Harry admitted readily. But Mother says true appreciation of deadly creatures includes acknowledging the fear they inspire. It's part of their beauty. Rather than keeping the information to himself, Harry ensured all champions knew about the dragons, feeling that facing such creatures deserved fair preparation. This gesture impressed Cedric enough to later provide Harry with a hint about the golden egg clue for the second task. The day of the first task arrived with Harry drawing the Hungarian horntail, the most dangerous of the 4 dragons. His objective, retrieve a golden egg without being killed. While other champions used transfiguration or charm work, Harry's approach reflected his unique upbringing. He began by bowing deeply to the dragon, maintaining eye contact, a gesture of respect Morticia had taught him was essential when confronting ancient magical creatures. The horntail paused its aggressive posturing, tilting its massive head slightly in confusion at this unusual human behavior. Harry then drew his wand and conjured a series of dark, flame-resistant ribbons that danced around the arena, distracting the dragon with their snake-like movements while he carefully made his way toward the golden egg. Is Potter distracting the dragon with a ribbon dance? Bagman's magically amplified voice questioned incredulously. I've never seen this approach before. The technique worked until Harry was nearly at the egg, when the dragon, realizing the deception, sent a massive jet of flame directly at him. Rather than dodging, Harry pulled out one of Wednesday's explosive quills and tossed it into the path of the flame. The resulting explosion created a momentary fire vortex that temporarily disoriented the dragon, allowing Harry to grab the egg and dive behind a boulder just as another flame blast scorched the ground where he'd stood. Extraordinary! Bagman shouted. Potter's using what appears to be unconventional magical items alongside traditional spellwork. Creative and effective, if rather alarming. Harry emerged victorious with minimal injuries, just a singed robe and a shallow cut on his arm that he hadn't even noticed in the excitement. You weren't kidding about facing death with style, Hermione commented shakily afterward. I thought my heart would stop when you just stood there facing its flame. The horntail was beautiful, Harry said sincerely. Did you see how the light reflected off its scales when it reared up? Mother would have been entranced. His score placed him tied for first with Victor Crumb, and the success helped reconcile his friendship with Ron, who finally accepted Harry hadn't entered himself after witnessing the genuine danger of the task. The golden egg, when opened, emitted an ear-splitting shriek that most found unbearable. Harry, however, listened with interest. "It reminds me of the banshee great-aunt Dementia kept in the East Wing," he noted. "Though less melodic." Cedric's hint about taking the egg to the bathroom led Harry to discover it contained a merfolk song when opened underwater, revealing the second task would involve retrieving something valuable from the lake. As Christmas approached, another challenge emerged: the Yule Ball. Champions were required to open the dancing with their partners, meaning Harry needed a date, a prospect more terrifying than facing the Horntail. After awkwardly attempting to ask Cho Chang, who had already agreed to go with Cedric, Harry found unexpected success with Ginny Weasley, who accepted his invitation with surprising enthusiasm. "You're sure you want to go with me?" Harry confirmed. "Mother says clarity of consent is particularly important for Addamses, as our idea of an enjoyable evening can differ from conventional expectations. After growing up with Fred and George, I doubt your family could shock me," Ginny replied with confidence. "Besides, you faced a dragon. How scary could dancing be?" The night of the ball revealed a transformed Great Hall, glittering with frost and starlight. Harry, taking Morticia's advice to honor occasions with appropriate dramatic presence, wore formal robes of deep midnight blue with subtle silver embroidery along the collar and cuffs, custom-made to Addams' specifications and shipped from the family tailor in New York. "You clean up well, Potter Addams," Professor McGonagall remarked with rare approval as the champions gathered to make their entrance. "Mother says formal occasions deserve respect through presentation," Harry replied. "Though she did recommend a walking cane with a silver raven's head, which I thought might be excessive." "Quite," McGonagall agreed dryly. Ginny's entrance in elegant emerald robes created a stir, as did her hand placed comfortably in the crook of Harry's arm, her confidence matching his as they took their position for the opening dance. "You seem unusually at ease," Ginny noted as they began the first waltz. "I expected you to be stepping all over my feet." "Father insisted on teaching me proper ballroom dancing," Harry explained, leading her into a turn. "He says, an Addams must glide across the ballroom as gracefully as they glide through a graveyard at midnight." "Your family really does have a saying for everything," Ginny laughed. "Usually involving death, darkness, or explosions," Harry agreed with a smile. The evening progressed pleasantly until Harry overheard an argument between Hagrid and Madame Maxime regarding their giant heritage, a revelation that fascinated rather than shocked him. Half-giant ancestry explains so much about Hagrid's natural affinity for large creatures, Harry commented to Hermione, who had come with Victor Crumb. "Mother would find it genetically fascinating. Most wizards would find it horrifying," Hermione pointed out. "Giants have a reputation for brutality. Prejudice based on species is so limiting," Harry sighed. "The Addams family has intermarried with numerous magical beings over the centuries. Great-grandfather Alastair even courted a Selkie for 7 years before she declined his proposal by eating his pet octopus." As January brought bitterly cold weather to Hogwarts, Harry focused on preparing for the second task. The challenge of breathing underwater for an hour led him to explore various options, from the bubblehead charm to transfiguration. It was Neville, surprisingly, who suggested gillyweed, having read about its properties in a herbology text. Harry's research confirmed its effectiveness, though he added his own Addams twist to the preparation. "Grandmama always says natural transformative substances respond to moonlight exposure," he explained to a confused Neville as they laid the gillyweed on the astronomy tower under the full moon the night before the task. "Does that actually do anything?" Neville asked skeptically. "Possibly not," Harry admitted. "But family traditions have their own magic. Mother would be disappointed if I didn't at least try." The second task revealed what would be taken from each champion, the person they would sorely miss. For Harry, this was Ron, a choice that made sense given their recently repaired friendship. Diving into the lake with his moon-bathed gillyweed, Harry found the transformation exhilarating, his neck sprouting gills, hands and feet elongating into flipper-like appendages. Fascinating, he tried to say, producing only bubbles as he experimented with his new form. The underwater world of the Black Lake proved both beautiful and treacherous. Harry navigated through forests of swaying weeds, evaded Grindylows with quick defensive spells, and finally reached the Merepeople village where the hostages floated, tethered and unconscious. Harry found not only Ron, but Hermione, Krum's hostage, Cho Chang, Cedric's, and a young girl who had to be Fleur's sister. When no sign of Fleur appeared and the Merepeople prevented Harry from taking more than his own hostage, he made a characteristic decision. "I'll take them both," he insisted, wand raised defensively as the gillyweed's effects began to wane. "The little girl too." "Only yours," a merperson hissed, trident pointed threateningly. "Then I'll stay until time expires," Harry countered, positioning himself protectively beside Fleur's sister. The song said, "Too late, it's gone, it won't come back. I won't let that happen to her." This moral stand resulted in Harry finishing well outside the time limit, having waited to ensure all hostages were safely retrieved. The judges, however, awarded him high marks for moral fiber, placing him again tied for first place with Cedric Diggory. "You didn't really think they'd let the hostages die, did you?" Ron asked afterward. "No," Harry admitted. "But Mother says true character emerges when facing apparent no-win scenarios. The Addams approach is never to accept artificial limitations." "Your mother would be proud," Fleur said, approaching to thank him for saving her sister. "Most wizards think only of winning. The Addams family has never prioritized conventional victory," Harry explained. "We prefer memorable participation." The final task, a hedge maze containing the Triwizard Cup, loomed at the end of June. In the weeks leading up to it, Harry practiced defensive spells, navigational charms, and Addams family techniques for sensing magical traps. The night before the third task, Harry received a package from home containing what appeared to be an ordinary silver pocket watch. Morticia's note explained, "Dearest Harry, for your final trial, we send this family heirloom, Grandfather Addams' directional timepiece. Beyond showing hours, it detects magical disturbances and points toward the path of greatest destiny, not always the safest route, but invariably the most significant. The watch has guided Addamses through catacombs, labyrinths, and the treacherous social seasons of Victorian London. Trust its guidance when intuition fails. The family will be watching through great-grandmother's crystal of distant viewing. Whatever the outcome, face it with Addams' dignity." With macabre affection, Mother, the maze proved every bit as challenging as expected, filled with enchanted mist, boggart-like creatures, and a sphinx posing deadly riddles. Harry's pocket watch vibrated at crucial junctions, its hands spinning to indicate directions that sometimes led toward danger rather than away, yet always toward his ultimate destiny. When a scream pierced the night, Harry found Fleur unconscious, apparently attacked by something within the maze. After sending up red sparks to summon the judges, he continued, soon encountering Victor Krum moving with an unnatural stiffness that suggested the Imperious Curse. Krum attacked Cedric with the Cruciatus Curse, forcing Harry to stun him before he could cause serious harm. "He's been bewitched," Harry explained to a shaken Cedric. "Someone's interfering with the tournament." They agreed to proceed separately but warn each other if necessary. Harry consulted his watch at the next junction, finding it pointing firmly toward what appeared to be the most treacherous path, one filled with swirling dark mist. "Toward greatest destiny, not safest passage," Harry murmured, remembering Morticia's words as he plunged into the mist. After battling an acromantula that nearly crushed his leg, Harry found himself facing the glittering Triwizard Cup alongside Cedric, who had arrived simultaneously from another path. Together, Harry suggested after a moment of competitive tension. "A true Hogwarts victory." Cedric agreed, and they grasped the cup simultaneously, only to feel the distinctive hook behind the navel that signified a portkey activation. They landed hard in an overgrown graveyard, the cup flung aside as they struggled to their feet. "Did you know it was a portkey?" Cedric asked, wand drawn defensively. No, Harry replied, his pocket watch now vibrating violently against his chest. He pulled it out, finding all hands pointing directly toward the darkness between the tombstones, where a short figure approached carrying what looked like a bundle of robes. "Kill the spare," came a high, cold voice from the bundle. A flash of green light erupted from the figure's wand, striking Cedric in the chest. The Hufflepuff champion fell backward, his empty eyes staring upward at the night sky, dead before he hit the ground. Harry felt an odd calm descend over him, the Addams' acceptance of death's inevitability creating a strange clarity in the moment of crisis. "That was unnecessary," he stated with surprising steadiness, addressing the bundle rather than the servant. "Cedric posed no threat to you, Voldemort." The high voice chuckled. "You recognize me, Harry Potter? Even in this weakened form?" "Mother says death leaves an unmistakable signature on those who've damaged their souls avoiding it," Harry replied. "You feel fractured. Like the diary, but more so." Before Voldemort could respond, Harry was seized by the short man, who he now recognized as Peter Pettigrew, and bound tightly to a marble headstone. The epitaph read Tom Riddle, and Harry felt the pieces click into place. "Your father's grave," he observed. "Symbolically powerful for the ritual you're planning." "Clever boy," Voldemort's voice wheezed. "You understand ritual magic, thanks to your unusual upbringing." Pettigrew began preparing a massive stone cauldron, lighting a fire beneath it. The liquid within bubbled and sparked as he unwrapped the bundle, revealing a creature that made Harry's breath catch, not in fear, but in fascination. The thing that had once been Voldemort resembled a hairless, scaled infant with slitted red eyes and unnaturally long, thin limbs. It was grotesque yet compelling, a being that had pushed beyond humanity into something other. "An interesting form," Harry commented, genuinely intrigued despite his predicament. "Self-created or a consequence of soul damage?" The creature's eyes narrowed. "You show curiosity where others show revulsion." "The Addams' influence, no doubt." Pettigrew dropped the creature into the cauldron, then began the ritual. "Bone of the father, unknowingly given, you will renew your son." A bone from the grave rose and fell into the cauldron. "Flesh of the servant, willingly given, you will revive your master." Pettigrew cut off his own hand, which fell with a splash into the potion. "Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken, you will resurrect your foe." Pettigrew approached Harry with a dagger, slicing into his arm and collecting his blood in a vial. When Pettigrew added Harry's blood to the cauldron, however, something unexpected happened. The potion, which had been emitting dark vapor, suddenly glowed with an otherworldly light for an instant before returning to its previous state. "Interesting," Harry murmured. "The ritual rejected something." Minutes later, Voldemort rose from the cauldron, restored to a tall, skeletally thin human form with chalk-white skin, noseless face, and glowing red eyes. He examined his new body with evident satisfaction before turning to Harry. "Harry Potter," he said softly. "The boy who lived, come to die." Harry met his gaze steadily. "We all die eventually. Mother says it's not the fact of death that matters, but how we face it." Voldemort's lipless mouth curved in a mirthless smile. "Your Addams' mother has filled your head with nonsense. Death is the enemy to be conquered, not embraced. That philosophy has left your soul in pieces," Harry observed. "Hardly a conquest." As Death Eaters operated into the graveyard, responding to Voldemort's summons through their dark marks, Harry found himself witnessing what amounted to a macabre reunion. Voldemort addressed his followers, punishing those who had abandoned him and rewarding the faithful. Eventually, his attention returned to Harry. "Now, Harry Potter, you will face me like a man. We will duel, and I will prove once and for all who is the greater wizard." Pettigrew untied Harry and thrust his wand into his hand. The Death Eaters formed a circle around them as Voldemort insisted Harry bow before they began. "Mother taught me to bow only to those who've earned respect through wisdom, not those who demand it through fear," Harry replied, standing straight. "But I will acknowledge you as a formidable opponent." He inclined his head slightly, a gesture of recognition rather than subservience. Voldemort's face contorted with fury. Crucio. Pain beyond imagination tore through Harry's body. Yet even as he fell to his knees, something unexpected happened. Rather than fighting the pain, Harry mentally applied an Addams family technique Grandmama had taught him for appreciating the exquisite nuances of suffering. Pain is merely intense sensation, her voice echoed in his memory. Categorize it, acknowledge it, then set it aside. The curse didn't hurt less, but Harry's relationship to the pain shifted. When Voldemort lifted the curse, expecting to find him broken, Harry rose to his feet with remarkable composure. That was educational, he managed, his voice steady despite his trembling limbs. Voldemort's eyes widened slightly. Perhaps you need a more permanent lesson. Avada Kedavra. Expelliarmus. Harry shouted simultaneously. The spells collided in mid-air, creating a golden beam of light connecting their wands, the rare priori incantatem effect caused by Brother Wand's force to battle. A dome of golden light enclosed them as Voldemort's previous victims began emerging from his wand in reverse order: Cedric, an old man, a woman Harry didn't recognize, and finally, his parents. Hold on, Harry, his father's echo encouraged. When the connection breaks, we can give you time, his mother added. Take Cedric back to Hogwarts. I will, Harry promised. You've grown into someone wonderful, Lily added. Different than we might have imagined, but perfect in your own way. The Addamses have raised you well, James acknowledged. We can see it in how you face him without fear. When Harry broke the connection and ran for Cedric's body, summoning the Portkey cup as the ghostly figures swarmed Voldemort, he carried with him not just the knowledge that his parents approved of his Addams upbringing, but a deeper understanding of his unique position between worlds, birth and adoptive families, life and death, light and shadow. The cup transported him back to Hogwarts, Cedric's body clutched tightly in his arms as the crowd's cheers turned to screams of horror. He's back, Harry announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. Voldemort's back. He killed Cedric. The chaos that followed, Mad-Eye Moody revealed as the imprisoned Barty Crouch Jr. Using Polyjuice Potion, the Ministry's immediate denial of Voldemort's return, the school's collective grief for Cedric, passed in a blur for Harry. Through it all, he maintained the composed dignity Morticia had instilled in him, even as he processed his own complex emotions about witnessing death so directly. You're handling this differently than I would expect, Hermione observed the night before they were to return home. Cedric died right in front of you. Death isn't something to fear or repress, Harry explained quietly. It's something to acknowledge and honor. Cedric died with dignity, facing unknown danger with courage. That doesn't make it less tragic, she pointed out. Of course not, Harry agreed. Mother says tragedy has its own beauty, not because suffering is desirable, but because it reflects the depth of our capacity to care. As the Hogwarts Express carried them toward London, Harry reflected on the year's events and what lay ahead. Voldemort had returned, yet something had gone awry with the resurrection ritual, that momentary flash when his blood was added. Harry's hand drifted to his pocket watch, which had fallen still since the graveyard. When he opened it, he found all hands pointing to himself, as if to say his own path was now the direction of greatest destiny. Whatever happens next, he murmured, I'll face it as an Addams. Chapter 3, Begging for Understanding. The Hogwarts Express hadn't even pulled out of Hogsmeade Station when owls began arriving with the Evening Prophet. The headline blared, Potter's Tall Tale, Boy Claims UNOWHO's Return. Harry glanced at it, then looked away without reaction. This is just the beginning, he told Ron and Hermione quietly. Mother always says denial is the first defense against unwelcome truths. The Ministry can't just pretend nothing happened. Hermione protested, scanning the article. Cedric died. They're calling that a tragic tournament accident, Harry replied, not bothering to read the details. Humans have an extraordinary capacity to rationalize away what frightens them. You say, humans, like you're not one, Ron noted with a raised eyebrow. Harry smiled faintly. An Addams family habit. We tend to observe humanity as if slightly adjacent to it. As the train carried them toward London, Harry found his thoughts returning to the graveyard, not with trauma or fear, but with analytical curiosity about what had happened when his blood entered the cauldron. That momentary flash of rejection suggested something had gone wrong with Voldemort's carefully planned resurrection. "I need to research blood rituals when I get home," he murmured, making a note in the small black journal Morticia had given him for recording magical observations. "Blood rituals?" Hermione looked alarmed. "Harry, that's extremely dark magic." "Old magic," Harry corrected automatically. "And necessary understanding if I'm going to face him again." When the Hogwarts Express pulled into King's Cross Station, the Addams family created their usual stir on platform 9 3/4. Morticia's elegant black gown with its trailing tentacle-like hem, Gomez's vintage pinstriped suit, Wednesday's severe braids, and Pugsley's portly figure clutching what appeared to be a small explosive device, they stood out even among the colorful assortment of wizarding families. "Harry, my little raven," Morticia called, arms outstretched. "We've been following your tournament exploits with such pride." Harry embraced his adoptive mother, drawing comfort from her familiar scent of roses and nightshade. "I have so much to tell you. About the graveyard, Voldemort's return, things I couldn't put in letters." "We suspected as much," Gomez nodded gravely, clapping Harry on the shoulder. "The family crystal showed disturbing omens around the time of the third task." Great Aunt Dementia woke from her 20-year trance specifically to announce, "The fractured one rises from cauldron fire." Harry noticed several nearby wizarding families edging away from their conversation. "Perhaps we should continue this at home." "Of course," Morticia agreed. "Lurch has the hearse waiting. Your father enchanted it with several new features for the occasion." After saying goodbye to Ron and Hermione with promises to stay in touch, Harry followed his family to the imposing black vehicle parked flagrantly in a no-parking zone outside the station. Several parking enforcement officers lay unconscious nearby. "Simple sleep spell," Gomez explained cheerfully, noticing Harry's glance. "They'll wake in an hour with a strange craving for beetle juice." The drive to the Addams mansion allowed Harry to share a condensed version of the graveyard events. Rather than showing horror, the family listened with academic interest, particularly regarding the ritual components. "Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, blood of the enemy," Morticia mused. A classic resurrection configuration, though typically more symbolic than effective. The blood extraction was the key component, Wednesday noted. Did he use a ceremonial dagger or something mundane? "Silver, ornately carved with serpents," Harry recalled. "But something strange happened when my blood entered the cauldron. There was a flash, like the potion briefly rejected it before accepting it." Morticia and Gomez exchanged significant glances. "Most interesting," Gomez murmured. "Most interesting indeed. We'll need to consult the library," Morticia decided. "The ancient grimoire of resurrectory practices might offer insight. I believe it's on the 3rd level, behind the bookcase that moans on full moons." Upon reaching the mansion, Harry felt the familiar comfort of home wash over him. The building seemed to welcome him, the front doors swinging open of their own accord, the hall chandelier tinkling a discordant melody that passed for music in the Addams household. "Thing has been organizing your correspondence," Morticia noted as the disembodied hand scuttled across the banister to greet Harry enthusiastically. "You've received several letters from your godfather, delivered by rather unusual birds. Thing took the liberty of feeding them raw liver to restore their strength." "Thank you, Thing," Harry smiled as the hand gave him a thumbs up before scurrying away. That evening, after a welcome-home dinner featuring Grandmama's special, resurrection celebration stew, the main ingredient of which Harry wisely chose not to inquire about, the family gathered in the library to analyze the graveyard ritual in detail. "The flash when your blood entered the cauldron suggests a fundamental incompatibility," Grandmama concluded after Harry had repeated every detail he could remember. "As if your blood carried something that opposed Voldemort's essential nature." "The protection from your mother's sacrifice," Morticia suggested. Not Lily's sacrifice alone, but how that sacrifice was honored and nurtured through your Addams upbringing. We've always encouraged your connection to death rather than teaching you to fear it, Gomez explained, puffing on his cigar. Perhaps that perspective manifests physically in your blood. It's more than perspective, Grandmama interjected, her ancient eyes focused on Harry's scar. When death marks someone but doesn't take them, it leaves a piece of itself behind. The Addams family has always recognized and nurtured that connection rather than trying to cleanse it away like most wizarding families would. Harry touched his scar thoughtfully. Voldemort seems fixated on conquering death. He called it, the enemy, to be defeated. Such a limited perspective, Morticia sighed. Death isn't an enemy but a dance partner, a companion through life's journey, not merely its conclusion. That's why he'll never truly understand power, Gomez declared. He seeks to dominate what should be embraced. Their analysis continued late into the night, consulting ancient tomes that would have sent the Ministry's Dark Artifact Confiscation Unit into conniptions. By morning, they had formed a theory. Harry's blood carried not just the protective magic of his mother's sacrifice but also the philosophical imprint of his Addams upbringing, a perspective on death that was fundamentally incompatible with Voldemort's fractured soul and desperate fear of mortality. The summer that followed was intense. Beyond the standard Addams recreational activities, midnight swamp expeditions, explosive experiments in the family crypt, and Wednesday's increasingly concerning collection of cursed dolls, Harry dedicated himself to serious magical preparation. If conventional magic won't defeat him, perhaps unconventional perspective will, Harry reasoned during a training session with Gomez in the mansion's subterranean dueling chamber. Precisely. Gomez agreed, lunging with his enchanted fencing foil. An enemy who fears death can be undone by one who doesn't. The Addams approach to conflict has always been psychological as much as magical. Harry's 15th birthday arrived with the traditional Addams celebration, a midnight gathering in the family graveyard, where each relative presented gifts suited to a young wizard potentially facing a newly resurrected Dark Lord. Morticia's gift was particularly special, a slender black wand case lined with midnight blue velvet. For carrying a secondary wand, she explained. This belonged to great-grandfather Alphonse. The interior is charmed to connect to a hidden dimensional pocket where a spare wand can be concealed beyond detection spells. But I don't have a second wand, Harry pointed out. Not yet, Morticia smiled mysteriously. But preparations have been made. From Grandmama, Harry received a set of crystal vials containing what she described as essence of mortality, distilled magical extracts that, when released, created an atmospheric effect forcing all present to briefly contemplate their inevitable demise. Most effective against those who fear their end, she cackled. One drop vaporized in air should induce existential terror in anyone desperately clinging to immortality. Wednesday presented a modified version of her explosive quills, now enchanted to activate only when exposed to the magical signature of dark curses. They detonate when hit with unforgivables, she explained flatly. I tested them on Pugsley. She did, Pugsley confirmed cheerfully, showing a bandaged hand. Lost 3 fingers, but they grew back eventually. Lurch contributed a specially modified violin whose discordant notes could disrupt concentrated magic when played at the right frequency. Thing offered a pair of enchanted gloves that could catch spells and briefly hold them before redirecting their energy. Gomez's gift came last, a vintage pocket watch made of tarnished silver, its face showing not hours and minutes but abstract symbols representing various magical energies. The chronometer of inevitability, he announced proudly. Shows the approaching proximity of death. Not as prediction, but as acknowledgement of life's beautiful fragility. Harry accepted each gift with genuine appreciation, understanding that his family's unconventional approach to magic might well provide advantages no traditional wizarding education could match. News from the wizarding world arrived sporadically. The Daily Prophet continued its campaign questioning Harry's sanity and Dumbledore's judgment, while more reliable information came through letters from Sirius, Hermione, and the Weasleys. The Ministry's interference grows daily, Sirius wrote in one heavily encoded message. Fudge fears Dumbledore more than Voldemort, a classic case of shooting the messenger. Expect changes at Hogwarts this year, none for the better. Hermione reported similar concerns. My parents hear nothing unusual in the Muggle news, but there's a strange tension everywhere. People are choosing sides without acknowledging that's what they're doing. In early August, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Addams mansion, Albus Dumbledore himself, looking distinctly uncomfortable as Lurch showed him into the drawing room where 6 suits of armor stood in various threatening poses. Headmaster. Morticia greeted warmly. What an unexpected pleasure. Do mind the 3rd chair from the fireplace, it hasn't been fed this week. Thank you for the warning, Dumbledore replied, carefully selecting a different seat. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but security concerns necessitate discretion. We understand completely, Gomez assured him. The mansion has 17 secret entrances specifically for clandestine visitors. You could have used the underwater passage through the swamp, invigorating exercise. After declining Grandmama's offer of refreshment, a wise decision, given the bubbling green concoction she presented, Dumbledore came to the point. Harry, I must apologize for my distance since Voldemort's return, he began. There are reasons I cannot fully explain yet, but know that it's for your protection, not lack of concern. I understand, Professor, Harry replied. Mother says the most important truths often require careful timing in their revelation. Dumbledore's gaze flicked to Morticia, a hint of surprise in his expression at hearing her quoted with such respect. Indeed. The reason for my visit is twofold. First, to inform you that the Order of the Phoenix, a group that fought Voldemort in the First War, has been re-established. Second, to arrange additional protection for you during the school year. I assure you, Headmaster, Morticia interjected smoothly, Harry has been receiving excellent protective training. Just yesterday he successfully navigated the family labyrinth blindfolded while avoiding 17 different curse traps and Cousin Itt's experimental hair growth gas. Most impressive, Dumbledore acknowledged with a slight smile. But Voldemort's focus on Harry goes beyond ordinary danger. We believe he's become obsessed with understanding why his killing curse failed 14 years ago. The mysteries of death often become fixations for those who fear it, Morticia observed. We've taught Harry to embrace death's inevitable presence rather than attempting to escape it. A philosophy Voldemort would find incomprehensible, Dumbledore noted. Perhaps therein lies an advantage we haven't fully explored. The conversation shifted to practical arrangements. Harry would return to Hogwarts as usual but with additional protections and emergency protocols. An Order member would escort him to King's Cross Station on September 1st. Before departing, Dumbledore requested a private word with Harry in the mansion's conservatory, among Morticia's collection of sentient carnivorous plants. Harry, I must ask, how are you truly coping with what happened in that graveyard? The headmaster's blue eyes were piercing behind his half-moon spectacles. Many would be traumatized by such an experience. Harry considered the question seriously. I won't pretend it wasn't disturbing, Professor. Cedric's death was a tragedy, and witnessing Voldemort's return was intense. But the Addams family has prepared me well for confronting darkness. How so? By teaching me that darkness itself isn't evil, it's natural, necessary, and can even be beautiful. What Voldemort represents isn't true darkness but a perversion of natural order, specifically, the denial of death's place in life's cycle. Dumbledore studied him with new interest. You have a remarkably mature perspective for someone so young. The Addamses don't believe in shielding children from life's fundamental truths, Harry explained. Mother says understanding mortality young leads to living more authentically. Your adoptive family continues to surprise me, Dumbledore admitted. When Severus advocated for your placement with them, I had significant reservations. Professor Snape recommended me for the Addamses? Harry asked, genuinely surprised. He knew of their connection to your mother's ancestral line and suggested they might provide protection while allowing your magical nature to flourish without suppression. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. It seems his assessment was correct, if in ways none of us could have anticipated. After Dumbledore's departure, Harry sought out Morticia in her greenhouse, finding her pruning a particularly vicious-looking vine that attempted to strangle him before recognizing his scent. "Mother, did you know Professor Snape helped place me with our family?" "Yes, darling," Morticia confirmed, snipping a thorny stem with elegant precision. "He contacted us the night your parents were killed, before Dumbledore could implement his original plan to send you to those dreadful Dursleys." "But why would he do that?" "Everyone says he hated my father." "Hatred and love often entwine like my beloved thorn nightshade," Morticia replied. "Severus loved your mother deeply, a connection that transcended her death. He knew Lily would want you raised in a home where magic was celebrated, not feared." "Did you know him before that night?" Harry pressed. "We had encountered each other in certain, specialized potion circles," Morticia acknowledged. "The Addams family has always maintained connections throughout the magical world, particularly with those who appreciate the older arts. Severus recognized that we could offer protection through ancient magic that even Dumbledore might not fully understand." This revelation added another layer to Harry's complex relationship with his potions professor, a man who had never shown him warmth yet had ensured he grew up in a loving, if macabre, home. September 1st arrived with unusual weather, a thunderstorm of such intensity that Grandmama declared it auspicious for beginnings forged in conflict. Harry's escort to King's Cross turned out to be a group of Order members led by a young witch with bubblegum pink hair who introduced herself as Tonks. "Watch her, Harry. Merlin's pants, so this is the famous Addams mansion." She gazed up at the imposing structure with its Gothic spires and gargoyles that occasionally repositioned themselves when no one was looking directly at them. "It's exactly as spooky as my mum described." "Your mother knows our home?" Morticia inquired. "Andromeda Tonks, formerly Black," Tonks explained. "My mum's family has history with yours, though she doesn't talk about it much since being disowned." "Ah, the Black connection," Morticia nodded. "We must have you for dinner sometime, dear. Family connections should be nurtured, especially the disinherited ones. They often have the most interesting stories." The journey to King's Cross passed without incident, though Harry noticed his escorts maintained constant vigilance, wands ready beneath their muggle clothing. Platform 9 3/4 was subdued compared to previous years, with parents huddled in whispered conversations and children hurried quickly onto the train. "The fear is palpable," Harry observed to Ron and Hermione once they'd claimed a compartment. "You can almost taste it in the air." "That's a very Addams thing to say," Hermione noted with a half-smile. "Most people would prefer not tasting fear." "It's instructive," Harry shrugged. "Fear reveals priorities. Notice how parents are hovering near their children rather than socializing. Basic protective instincts." The train journey featured the usual visits from friends and the now expected antagonism from Draco Malfoy, who seemed oddly subdued despite his attempts at intimidation. "My father says your days are numbered, Potter," he drawled from the compartment doorway. "The Dark Lord has special plans for you. Please convey my regards to your father," Harry replied politely. "Mother always says it's important to maintain cordial relations with those planning your demise. Makes the eventual confrontation more interesting." Malfoy's pale face flushed with anger and confusion before he stormed off, leaving his usual threats unfinished. "You know, you could just tell him to shove off like a normal person," Ron suggested. "Where's the elegance in that?" Harry asked. "Besides, his father is indeed working with Voldemort, which makes him a potential source of information, even unwittingly." The welcoming feast at Hogwarts brought the introduction of Dolores Umbridge, a toad-like woman from the Ministry who interrupted Dumbledore's speech to deliver her own, a thinly veiled declaration that the Ministry was interfering at Hogwarts. "Progress for progress's sake must be discouraged," she simpered in a girlish voice that made Harry's skin crawl. "Let us preserve what must be preserved, perfect what can be perfected, and prune practices that ought to be prohibited." "Fascinating," Harry murmured to Hermione. "She speaks of pruning while embodying stagnation. Mother would find the contradiction delicious." Umbridge's true nature emerged quickly in their first defense against the dark arts class, where she announced they would be learning theory only, with no practical spellcasting. Understanding defensive principles in a secure, risk-free environment, she began. What use is theory in the real world? Harry interrupted, his voice calm but carrying. If we're attacked, it won't be in a risk-free environment. Umbridge's gaze fixed on him with dislike. Students will raise their hands in my class, Mr. Potter. Potter Addams, Harry corrected automatically. Excuse me. Her voice became dangerously sweet. My name is Harry Potter Addams. My adoption papers were filed with the Ministry 9 years ago. A flash of annoyance crossed her face. Be that as it may, Mr. Potter, you will not speak out of turn in my classroom. Apologies, Professor, Harry raised his hand. When she pointedly ignored it, he kept it raised, sitting in perfect stillness, a skill honed during Addams' family endurance training. After nearly 10 minutes, with the class watching in fascinated silence, Umbridge finally snapped. What is it, Mr. Potter? I was wondering, Harry said mildly, how theory alone will help us survive when Lord Voldemort attempts to kill us. The class gasped at his use of the name. Umbridge's face paled then flushed. 10 points from Gryffindor, she hissed. Now, let me make something quite plain. You have been told that a certain dark wizard has returned. This is a lie. So Cedric Diggory dropped dead of his own accord? Harry asked, his voice still unnervingly calm. Mr. Diggory's death was a tragic accident. It was murder, Harry stated flatly. I witnessed it. But I understand your reluctance to acknowledge uncomfortable truths. Mother says denial is the most predictable of all human responses. Detention, Mr. Potter. Umbridge's voice rose to a near shriek. My office, 5 o'clock. That evening, Harry discovered the true nature of Umbridge's punishment, a blood quill that carved words into the back of his hand as he wrote lines, I must not tell lies. To Umbridge's evident disappointment, Harry showed no distress at the painful punishment. Instead, he examined the magical instrument with academic interest between lines. Fascinating implementation, he commented, studying the quill. Self-replenishing blood ink drawn directly from the writer. We have several similar artifacts in the family collection, though ours are considerably older and tend to drain the writer entirely if used too long. This is punishment, Mr. Potter, not a scholarly discussion, Umbridge snapped, disconcerted by his reaction. Of course, Harry agreed pleasantly, returning to his lines. Though Mother would call it rather unimaginative punishment. Great Aunt Dementia's preferred discipline involved reciting Latin conjugations while standing in a barrel of electric eels. By the end of the session, the back of Harry's hand was raw and bleeding, but his composed demeanor remained unbroken. You know this is illegal, Professor, he noted conversationally as she examined his hand. Blood quills are classified as dark artifacts except in authorized contractual signings at Gringotts. Umbridge's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me, Mr. Potter? Not at all, Harry smiled. Merely making an observation. Mother always emphasized the importance of documentation. He nodded toward his hand. This leaves such clear evidence. The implied threat hung in the air between them. Something in Harry's unnatural calm seemed to unnerve Umbridge more than any angry outburst could have. As autumn progressed, Umbridge's educational decrees multiplied, each more restrictive than the last. When she was appointed High Inquisitor with power to inspect other professors, Harry recognized the systematic dismantling of Dumbledore's authority. It's actually quite elegant in its malevolence, he observed to Ron and Hermione as they studied in the common room. Isolate the target, restrict their power incrementally, replace allies with enemies, all while maintaining a facade of legitimacy. You sound almost admiring, Hermione said disapprovingly. One can appreciate the technique while deploring the purpose, Harry replied. Like admiring the efficiency of a Venus flytrap while preferring not to be the fly. When Hermione suggested they form a secret defense group to learn practical spells, Harry immediately supported the idea. The resulting organization, which named itself Dumbledore's Army, began meeting in the Room of Requirement with Harry as its reluctant instructor. His teaching style reflected his unique upbringing. Rather than focusing solely on defensive magic, Harry emphasized situational awareness, psychological resilience, and understanding the motivations behind dark magic. To effectively counter a spell, understand why it was cast, he explained during one session. Fear, hatred, dominance, each creates a different magical signature that can be exploited. That sounds like something a dark wizard would teach, Zacharias Smith commented suspiciously. Knowledge isn't inherently dark or light, Harry countered. Intent determines whether understanding the enemy makes you stronger or corrupts you. Where did you learn this stuff? Dean Thomas asked curiously. They don't teach this approach at Hogwarts. Family education, Harry replied with a slight smile. The Addamses have a comprehensive view of magical conflict. By Christmas, the DA had made remarkable progress. Even Neville Longbottom, previously timid and magically insecure, had developed impressive skills under Harry's patient guidance. You're a natural teacher, Hermione commented after watching Harry help Luna master a particularly tricky shield charm. I'm just sharing what I've learned, Harry demurred. Mother's teaching methods were unusual but effective. She always said, fear of failure inhibits true magical expression more than any lack of talent. The Christmas holidays brought Harry back to the Addams mansion, though only briefly. After a traditional family celebration involving ritual drumming, ancestral invocation, and Pugsley's near-fatal attempt to toboggan down the mansion's roof using greased bedsheets, Harry was whisked away to Grimmauld Place, the ancient and gloomy black family home now serving as Order headquarters. Sirius welcomed Harry with a bone-crushing hug. Finally. Someone who might actually appreciate this dreary old place. Indeed, where the Weasleys found the house depressing with its mounted elf heads and cursed artifacts, Harry felt oddly at home. The dark paneling, magical portraits that whispered threats, and general atmosphere of centuries-old magical saturation reminded him pleasantly of the Addams mansion's east wing. The preservation spells on these mounted heads are remarkably complex, Harry noted, examining the house elf display. Similar to techniques Grandmama uses for her collection of famous witches' fingernails. Sirius barked a laugh. You really were raised by the Addamses, weren't you? Most people find this place nightmare-inducing. Different perspectives, Harry shrugged. Mother says discomfort often indicates encountering truth one isn't prepared to acknowledge. The holiday took a darker turn when Arthur Weasley was attacked by Nagini, Voldemort's snake, while guarding the Department of Mysteries. More disturbing to Harry was his experience of the attack, seeing it through the snake's eyes in a vivid dream. It was like I was the snake, he explained to Sirius in the privacy of the library. Not just watching, but feeling its emotions, its hunger. Sirius looked troubled. That's not normal, even for magical connections. Have you told Dumbledore? Not yet. But Mother noticed something similar last summer. She said my scar contains a resonance that sometimes aligns with Voldemort's consciousness. Your adoptive mother detected this? Sirius asked skeptically. The Addams family has extensive experience with soul fragments, possession, and consciousness transference, Harry explained. Great-Uncle Forsyth once had his personality accidentally divided between his body and a particularly receptive grandfather clock. We still consult the clock on investment decisions. After Christmas, Harry was summoned to Snape's dungeon office for a new and unwelcome development, Occlumency lessons. Dumbledore, concerned about Harry's mental connection to Voldemort, had arranged for Snape to teach him to shield his mind. Their first session went poorly. Snape's repeated invasions of Harry's memories left him mentally battered, with little instruction on how to actually defend himself. You're not trying, Potter, Snape sneered after breaking into a particularly private memory of Harry's midnight graveyard rituals with Morticia. With respect, Professor, Harry replied, struggling to maintain composure, I'm attempting to implement the techniques you've described, but your instructions lack specificity. Snape's eyes narrowed. Perhaps you require motivation rather than instruction. Legilimens. This time, however, Harry was prepared. Drawing on meditative techniques Morticia had taught him for communing with ancestral spirits, he visualized his mind as the Addams family labyrinth, dark, winding, and filled with traps for the unwary. When Snape pushed into his thoughts, he found himself navigating bewildering passages that shifted and changed, leading away from Harry's core memories toward carefully constructed dead ends. After a minute of mental struggle, Snape withdrew, a hint of surprise in his usually impassive expression. That was, not entirely inadequate, he admitted reluctantly. What technique did you use? Mental architecture visualization, Harry explained. Mother taught me to create memory labyrinths for spiritual communion purposes. Interesting, Snape murmured. The Addams methods are unorthodox, but evidently not without merit. Their subsequent sessions showed gradual improvement. Though Snape remained harsh and critical, Harry sensed a grudging respect developing, particularly when he successfully repelled an attack by channeling his family's natural affinity for mental darkness. You've protected your mind by making it inherently unwelcoming to intruders, Snape observed after one session. An unusual approach, but effective against those who lack experience with alternative magical perspectives. Will it work against Voldemort? Harry asked directly. Snape's expression tightened at the name. The Dark Lord is exceptionally skilled at mental penetration. However, your mind structure may confuse him temporarily, enough to recognize and potentially resist an intrusion. As they were concluding the lesson, Harry asked the question that had been bothering him since Dumbledore's summer visit. Sir, why did you recommend the Addams family for my guardianship? Snape froze momentarily, then turned away, organizing potion vials on his desk. The headmaster should not have shared that information. He didn't elaborate, only mentioned it happened. Harry waited patiently as Snape seemed to debate internally whether to respond. Your mother, Snape finally said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet, was fascinated by old magic. Not dark magic as most define it, but the ancient practices that modern wizards have abandoned out of ignorance or fear. The Addams family preserves those traditions without succumbing to the corruptions that typically accompany them. You knew they would teach me things Dumbledore might disapprove of. A ghost of a smile touched Snape's lips. I knew they would give you perspectives beyond the simplistic light-dark dichotomy that dominates British wizarding thought. Whether that serves you well or ill remains to be seen. The revelation of this unexpected alliance between Snape and the Addams family gave Harry much to consider as the school year progressed and Umbridge's reign intensified. February brought both challenge and opportunity. When the educational decree banning the Quibbler was enacted after it published Harry's interview about Voldemort's return, he responded with characteristic Addams ingenuity, charming copies to appear as approved ministry texts while retaining their actual content. Grandmother Frump's recipe for selective perception potion adapted quite nicely to parchment, he explained to an impressed Fred and George Weasley. Anyone looking for contraband sees only approved text, while actual readers see the truth. Brilliant! George declared. We could use that for our product development notes. You're welcome to the formula, Harry offered. Though I should warn you the side effects include temporary colorblindness and occasional prophetic hallucinations. The twins exchanged glances. Worth it, they decided in unison. The DA continued meeting successfully until an inevitable betrayal, Marietta Edgecombe reported them to Umbridge, triggering a dramatic confrontation in the room of requirement. When Dumbledore claimed responsibility for the Dumbledore's army, named to protect Harry and the others, Harry was struck by the headmaster's willingness to sacrifice his position. A strategic retreat rather than a true defeat, he observed to Hermione afterward. Father always says, when the enemy expects a corpse, sometimes it's wise to provide one, while ensuring your heart continues beating elsewhere. That's disturbingly specific, Hermione replied. But I see the point. With Dumbledore gone and Umbridge installed as headmistress, Hogwarts descended into a state of near tyranny, tempered only by the creative resistance of students and staff alike. The Weasley twins' spectacular departure, leaving a magical swamp and setting off spectacular fireworks, inspired others to subtler forms of rebellion. Harry's contribution was particularly effective, enchanting suits of armor to whisper contradictions to Umbridge's educational decrees whenever students passed them. The charm, based on Great-Uncle Knick-Knack's persistent murmuring hex, proved impossible for Umbridge to counter without removing the ancient armor entirely, something Hogwarts itself seemed unwilling to permit. The breaking point came with Harry's vision of Sirius being tortured in the Department of Mysteries. Despite Hermione's skepticism and his own occlumency training, the vision's intensity convinced Harry it was genuine. It could be a trap, Hermione warned as they debated what to do. Almost certainly, Harry agreed calmly. But that doesn't mean Sirius isn't in danger. Mother says, recognizing the trap is the first step toward turning it against the trapper. Their attempt to contact Sirius through Umbridge's office fire led to capture, and Umbridge's subsequent threat of the Cruciatus Curse revealed the depths of Ministry corruption. When Hermione lured Umbridge into the Forbidden Forest with a fictional tale of a weapon, Harry accompanied them with a surprising sense of anticipation. "The forest has always called to me," he commented as they walked deeper among the ancient trees. Mother says certain magical locations recognize kindred spirits. The Centaur's capture of Umbridge might have horrified some, but Harry viewed it with detached interest. Fascinating cultural justice system, he observed as they fled back to the castle. Father would be intrigued by the symbolic implications. Their journey to the Ministry of Magic aboard Thestrals, creatures Harry had always been able to see thanks to his unique relationship with death, culminated in exactly the trap Hermione had feared. The Department of Mysteries held not Sirius, but Death Eaters led by Lucius Malfoy, seeking a prophecy concerning Harry and Voldemort. The ensuing battle tested everything the DA had learned. When Bellatrix Lestrange cornered Neville, taunting him about torturing his parents, Harry intervened with unexpected authority. "Bellatrix Black Lestrange," he addressed her formally, using her full name in the traditional Addams manner for confronting powerful dark witches. "I believe we're distantly related through my mother's family." Bellatrix paused, momentarily confused by his calm demeanor and formal address. "What nonsense is this, Baby Potter?" "Morticia Addams, née Frump, is my adoptive mother," Harry explained conversationally, as if they weren't in the middle of a life-or-death battle. The Black, Frump, and Addams lines intersected several times over the centuries. "We share ancestral blood, however diluted." "The Addams family?" Something shifted in Bellatrix's mad eyes, a flicker of recognition. "The American branch with the unusual practices?" "The very same," Harry confirmed. "Mother speaks highly of the Black family magical talents, though she considers their recent political affiliations rather limiting." This bizarre exchange, conducted while spells exploded around them, created just enough distraction for Sirius to arrive and engage Bellatrix directly. Unfortunately, their duel ended with the unthinkable, Sirius falling through the veil of death after Bellatrix's stunning spell hit him squarely in the chest. Harry's reaction was not what anyone expected. Rather than immediate grief or rage, he observed the veil with intense interest, noting how it fluttered despite the absence of wind, how whispers seemed to emerge from its depths. "A true passage," he murmured, even as Lupin held him back from approaching it. "Not death as cessation, but as transition." His calm broke only when Bellatrix fled, cackling about killing Sirius. Harry pursued her to the Ministry atrium, where she taunted him mercilessly. "Did you love him, little baby Potter?" she mocked. "Did you love my dear cousin?" "He was family," Harry replied, his voice steady but threaded with genuine emotion. "The Addams family values blood bonds, even with those who choose different paths." "Then avenge him," Bellatrix challenged. "You need to mean it, Potter. You need to really want to cause pain." When Harry attempted the Cruciatus Curse, it barely affected her. Bellatrix laughed derisively. "Is that the best you can do? Your pathetic curse couldn't even touch me." "Righteous anger isn't enough for unforgivables," came a high, cold voice from the shadows. "You have to enjoy suffering, Harry. Perhaps I should demonstrate on you." Voldemort had arrived, his snake-like face even more terrible in the Ministry's atrium lights than it had been in the graveyard's darkness. Yet once again, Harry faced him without visible fear. You still don't understand, do you, Tom? Harry asked quietly. Causing pain isn't power. It's just the simplest application of force. Voldemort's red eyes narrowed at the use of his birth name. Always the philosopher, Harry. Let's see if death makes you wiser. Before he could cast the killing curse, Dumbledore arrived, engaging Voldemort in a duel of such magical brilliance that Harry could only watch in fascination. When Voldemort, failing to defeat Dumbledore directly, attempted to possess Harry instead, something unexpected happened. As the Dark Lord invaded his mind, Harry didn't resist conventionally. Instead, he opened himself fully to the mental connection, welcoming Voldemort into the labyrinthine construction of his Addams-influenced consciousness. Welcome to my mind, Harry thought deliberately. Let me show you what the Addamses taught me about death. He channeled memories not of love, which Voldemort expected and could defend against, but of his family's unique relationship with mortality, Morticia tenderly pruning deadly nightshade while explaining how poison and medicine differ only in dosage, Wednesday demonstrating how a butterfly's brief life makes its beauty more precious, Grandmama at her cauldron, brewing potions that allowed communion with ancestors long past. Most powerfully, Harry shared his absolute acceptance of death as natural and even beautiful, not something to be feared or avoided, but embraced as the completion of life's journey. Voldemort's reaction was immediate and violent. He fled Harry's mind with something like panic, physically recoiling as if burned. What are you? He gasped, genuine confusion in his voice. Before Harry could respond, the ministry atrium filled with arriving officials, including Minister Fudge himself, who stood gaping at Voldemort's unmistakable form before the Dark Lord disapparated. The aftermath unfolded quickly. Fudge, confronted with undeniable evidence, was forced to acknowledge Voldemort's return. Umbridge's reign at Hogwarts ended, and exams were cancelled in light of the extraordinary circumstances. Through it all, Harry processed Sirius's death with a perspective unique to his Addams upbringing. Rather than denying his grief, he embraced it fully, honoring it as testament to the bond they had shared. Sirius isn't gone, he explained to a concerned Hermione. He's simply transitioned to another state of being. The veil is a doorway, not an end. That's, actually a comforting way to think about it, she admitted. It's not just a comforting thought, Harry insisted. Mother says death isn't absence but transformation. Those we love remain connected to us, their influence continuing to shape our existence. When Dumbledore finally revealed the prophecy's contents, that either Harry or Voldemort must kill the other, his reaction surprised the headmaster. You seem remarkably composed for someone just told they must become either victim or killer, Dumbledore observed. The prophecy only confirms what I've suspected since the graveyard, Harry replied. Our connection isn't coincidental but fundamental. There's symmetry to it, we're opposites not just morally but philosophically. How so? He fragments his soul to avoid death. I've been taught to embrace death as part of life's wholeness. He seeks power through fear. I've learned that accepting fear diminishes its control. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Your Addams upbringing has given you a unique perspective that may indeed be Voldemort's undoing. He cannot comprehend what he fears most. As the school year concluded, Harry found himself more centered than many might expect after such traumatic events. The loss of Sirius hurt deeply, yet he processed it through the Addams family framework, death not as an end but as a transformation, grief not as something to overcome but to incorporate into one's ongoing existence. I'll miss him, he told Ron and Hermione as the Hogwarts Express carried them homeward. But Mother says the best tribute to those who've passed through the veil is to live fully and fearlessly. Your family has a very healthy approach to death, Hermione observed. It seems to help you cope. It's more than coping, Harry corrected. It's understanding. Death isn't something that happens only at life's end, it walks beside us always, giving meaning to each moment through its inevitability. Blimey, that's deep, Ron commented. Bit depressing though, isn't it? Harry smiled. Actually, it's liberating. When you accept death as natural rather than fearsome, you stop wasting energy dreading it and focus instead on living meaningfully. As the train pulled into King's Cross, Harry spotted the Addams family waiting on the platform, Morticia elegant in black, Gomez dapper in his pinstriped suit, Wednesday and Pugsley looking simultaneously bored and dangerous. "They're here to honor Sirius," Harry explained, seeing his friends' questioning looks. In Addams tradition, when family transitions to the next realm, the living gather to acknowledge the passage and celebrate the connection that remains. "That's actually really nice," Hermione said. Harry nodded. "Mother says grief shared is grief honored. Tonight we'll hold a séance to welcome Sirius's spirit home." After saying goodbye to his friends, Harry joined his family, accepting Morticia's cool embrace and Gomez's enthusiastic handshake. "We've prepared the ancestral séance chamber," Morticia informed him. "Grandmama believes Sirius's recent passage will make contact particularly clear. The veil thins between worlds when emotions run high," Gomez added. "Perfect conditions for communion." As they departed the station, Harry felt a profound gratitude for his unconventional family. Their approach to death, as natural, beautiful, and worthy of respect rather than fear, had given him not just comfort but a philosophical foundation that would prove crucial in the confrontations to come. The war with Voldemort was just beginning, but Harry Potter Addams faced it with a perspective his enemy could never understand, and therein lay his greatest strength. The summer after Sirius's death marked a turning point. While the wizarding world finally acknowledged Voldemort's return, implementing hasty security measures and spreading panic, the Addams family approached the growing darkness with characteristic equilibrium. "War has its own beauty," Morticia observed during dinner one evening, delicately slicing what appeared to be an unusually sentient mushroom. "The clarity it brings, the stripping away of pretense, the raw confrontation with mortality." "Indeed," Gomez agreed enthusiastically. "Nothing reveals character like conflict. Your great-grandfather Alaric discovered his talent for tactical hexwork only after being cornered by 7 Romanian vampire hunters. Emerged with a new appreciation for arterial spray patterns." Rather than finding such conversations disturbing, Harry drew strength from his family's unflinching perspective. They neither minimized the dangers ahead nor inflated them with unnecessary fear, they simply acknowledged reality and prepared accordingly. His 16th birthday celebration involved what Morticia called advanced defensive training, essentially, the family taking turns attacking Harry with increasingly creative and dangerous spells while he developed countermeasures. "Wednesday, darling, excellent use of the blinding banshee hex," Morticia praised as Harry narrowly deflected his sister's attack with a modified shield charm. "Harry, your recovery was admirable, though next time try incorporating the sideways roll Grandmama demonstrated. The trick is anticipating intent rather than just the spell itself," Grandmama advised, her ancient eyes sharp as she observed Harry's technique. "Feel the malice behind the magic, it announces itself before the wand moves." After a particularly grueling session involving Pugsley's experimental, exploding ectoplasm, spell, which left half the training room covered in glowing green slime, Harry received his most significant birthday gift, a secondary wand. 13 inches, black wood with a core of thestral tail hair and raven feather, twisted together, Morticia explained as she presented the slender black wand in its velvet-lined box. "Made by Violetta Nightshade, the finest wandcrafter outside conventional wand-making circles. It's not ministry registered," Gomez added with a conspiratorial wink. "Untraceable, unconnected to your magical signature in official records. The brother wand connection with Voldemort's wand makes your primary wand both powerful and problematic," Morticia explained. "This provides an alternative that he won't expect." Harry accepted the wand reverently, feeling an immediate connection as his fingers closed around the handle. Unlike his holly wand's warm response, this one emitted cool shadow-like wisps that curled around his arm before dissipating. "It recognizes your Addams nature," Morticia observed with satisfaction. "Your duality is now properly equipped, light and shadow, life and death, Potter and Addams." Training with both wands became Harry's focus for the remainder of summer. Under Grandmama's guidance, he developed the ability to channel different aspects of his magic through each, conventional spellwork through his holly wand, and the older, darker family magic through the Blackwood. 2 wands, 2 approaches, Grandmama cackled as Harry successfully maintained a shield charm with one wand while casting with the other. Divided focus but unified intent, the mark of a true practitioner. August brought an unexpected visitor, Albus Dumbledore himself, arriving unannounced one thunderous evening that had Lurch playing particularly ominous melodies on the organ. Headmaster Morticia greeted him in the foyer. What a pleasant surprise. You've arrived just in time for Grandmama's special toadstool and nightshade stew. Thank you, Mrs. Addams, but I've already dined, Dumbledore declined diplomatically. I've come regarding Harry's security arrangements for the coming year, and with a special request. The request, it turned out, involved Harry accompanying Dumbledore to recruit a new potions teacher, Horace Slughorn, who was hiding from Death Eaters in a Muggle village. Your presence may prove persuasive, Dumbledore explained. Horace has a particular interest in connecting with influential or talented students. A collector of people rather than objects, Morticia observed shrewdly. How fascinating. The Addams family had a similar ancestor. Great Aunt Desdemona maintained what she called her cabinet of notable acquaintances. Unfortunately, she meant it literally. The mission proved successful, with Slughorn unable to resist the temptation of adding the boy who lived to his collection of well-connected students. More significantly, Dumbledore used the journey to begin sharing crucial information about Voldemort's past, particularly his family history and obsession with collecting trophies. He seems fixated on proving his exceptionalism, Harry noted as they discussed Tom Riddle's childhood behaviors. Mother says those most desperate to demonstrate superiority are typically compensating for profound insecurity. A perceptive observation, Dumbledore agreed. Tom's origins as a half-blood orphan in a Muggle institution created deep-seated fears of inadequacy and mortality that he spent his life trying to overcome. By rejecting death itself, Harry concluded. Rather than accepting it as natural, he views it as the ultimate insult to his perceived greatness. The remainder of summer passed in intensive preparation. Beyond magical training, Harry spent hours with the family library's oldest grimoires, researching magical theory that connected life, death, and the soul's integrity. The ancient texts all agree, he told Morticia one night as they worked together in the library. Soul fragmentation creates power but diminishes wholeness. The more pieces split away, the less human the core remains. Precisely why such practices fell out of favor even among the darkest practitioners, Morticia agreed, turning a brittle page with elegant care. Not from moral objection but practical consequence. A fragmented soul eventually loses the capacity for certain magics that require wholeness of being. Like what? Harry asked curiously. The deepest magics, those involving love, joy, creation, and paradoxically, the true understanding of death itself. Morticia looked up from the ancient text. In seeking to escape death, one becomes increasingly incapable of comprehending its true nature. This insight proved valuable as Harry returned to Hogwarts for his 6th year, armed with new understanding and both wands carefully concealed on his person, the holly wand openly carried, the blackwood one hidden in the dimensional pocket of Alphonse's wand case, strapped to his forearm beneath his robes. The school year brought its own challenges, from Draco Malfoy's suspicious activities to Slughorn's Slug Club gatherings and private lessons with Dumbledore focused on Tom Riddle's transformation into Lord Voldemort. Harry's most significant discovery came through Slughorn's reluctant memory of discussing Horcruxes with the teenage Riddle. The revelation that Voldemort had deliberately split his soul into 7 pieces aligned perfectly with what the Addams grimoires had suggested. 7 is magically significant in soul magic, Harry explained to Ron and Hermione in a whispered conversation by the lake. Mother's ancestral grimoire calls it, the maximum fragmentation before complete dissolution of self. Your family has books on this? Hermione looked simultaneously horrified and intrigued. The Addams library contains knowledge across the spectrum of magical practice, Harry explained. Not for implementation but for understanding. Mother says, to combat the darkness, one must first comprehend its nature. As Dumbledore identified and destroyed Marvolo Gaunt's ring, confirming it as a Horcrux, Harry's training intensified. Their exploration of riddles passed through collected memories revealed a pattern of trophy-taking and significant object obsession that helped identify potential Horcrux candidates. The diary, the ring, likely something of Hufflepuff's and Ravenclaw's, possibly Slytherin's locket, Harry listed during one session with Dumbledore. Objects of significance transformed into vessels for soul fragments. Precisely, Dumbledore confirmed. And I believe I've located another, the locket, hidden in a seaside cave from Tom's orphanage days. Their expedition to the cave proved harrowing. The blood sacrifice required for entry, the Lake of Infery, and the potion that had to be consumed to reach the locket, all designed to protect Voldemort's precious soul fragment. When Dumbledore insisted on drinking the potion himself, Harry witnessed the great wizard reduced to begging and hallucinating. Water, Dumbledore gasped after consuming the final drops. Please, Harry. Harry, drawing on his Addams training in crisis management, remained composed despite the infery that emerged when he collected water from the lake. When they attacked, he instinctively drew his concealed blackwood wand rather than his primary one. Ignis Mortis, he cast, invoking one of Grandmama's specialty spells, literally, Death Fire, a variant of normal flame specifically effective against creatures between life and death. Blue-white fire erupted in a protective ring around them, driving back the infery with supernatural efficiency. Unlike standard fire, this flame seemed to recognize the nature of what it faced, actively pursuing the animated corpses until they retreated beneath the water's surface. Dumbledore, despite his weakened state, noted the unusual magic with interest. Not standard curriculum, Harry, he managed weakly. Grandmama's specialty, Harry explained, supporting the headmaster as they made their way out. The Addams family has considerable experience with reanimated remains. Upon returning to Hogsmeade, they discovered the worst. Death Eaters had penetrated Hogwarts, the dark mark hovering above the astronomy tower. Racing to the scene, Harry found himself immobilized by Dumbledore's silent spell and forced to watch, concealed beneath his invisibility cloak, as Draco Malfoy confronted the weakened headmaster. The subsequent events unfolded with terrible clarity: Draco's inability to complete his assassination mission, the arrival of other Death Eaters, and finally, Snape delivering the killing curse that sent Dumbledore plummeting from the tower. Released from the spell upon Dumbledore's death, Harry pursued Snape across the grounds, driven by an emotion unfamiliar to his Addams-trained sensibilities, hot, blinding rage that momentarily overshadowed his usual composed perspective on death. "He trusted you," Harry shouted, firing spells at Snape's retreating figure. "He defended you." Snape deflected Harry's attacks with contemptuous ease. "Your aim is as poor as your father's judgment, Potter." When Harry attempted to use Sectum Sempra, a dark spell he discovered in the Half-Blood Prince's potions book, Snape parried it with sudden fury. "You dare use my own spells against me," he snarled. "Yes, I am the Half-Blood Prince." This revelation, coupled with Dumbledore's death, left Harry reeling. As the Death Eaters escaped and the school mourned its fallen headmaster, Harry struggled to reconcile his Addams-taught acceptance of death with the profound loss he felt. "It's different when it's unexpected and unjust," Morticia acknowledged when the family arrived for Dumbledore's funeral. They created a striking picture in their formal mourning attire, even more elaborately black than their usual clothing, with Morticia wearing a veil of shadow-spun lace that seemed to float around her face. "Natural death we accept, but violation of life's proper course deserves righteous anger." The White Tomb ceremony was beautiful in its solemnity, yet Harry found himself thinking not of endings but transitions. As Dumbledore's body was encased in white marble, he recalled the headmaster's words about death being the next great adventure, a perspective not unlike the Addams philosophy. He understood, Harry murmured to Morticia as the ceremony concluded. "Not as we do, perhaps, but he grasped death's nature better than most." "The truly wise often reach similar conclusions through different paths," she agreed. "Your headmaster recognized that fearing death diminishes life, a fundamental Addams principle." As the funeral guests dispersed, Harry made his decision. he would not return to Hogwarts but would instead pursue the Horcrux hunt Dumbledore had begun. "I'll need to disappear for a while," he told his family as they gathered in the privacy of their guest quarters. "Voldemort will be hunting me more actively now." "The mansion's protection remains available," Gomez offered. "Centuries of Addams wards make it virtually unplottable to those without blood connection." "Thank you, but I need mobility," Harry explained. "Ron and Hermione will come with me. We have leads on the remaining Horcruxes that require investigation." "Then you'll need proper equipment," Wednesday stated flatly, opening a black leather case she'd brought. Inside lay an assortment of items that would have sent any ministry official into apoplexy, from enchanted weaponry to detection devices of questionable legality. "My personal collection," she explained with the faintest hint of pride. "The collapsible crossbow is particularly effective against those with magical shields but no physical defenses. Grandmama contributed a comprehensive potion kit containing remedies for everything from common injuries to obscure magical ailments, while Pugsley provided what he called emergency distraction devices, essentially magical explosives that could create targeted chaos when needed." "And from us," Morticia said, presenting a small ornate box lined with black velvet, "something special." Inside lay 3 pendants, each on a fine silver chain, stylized ravens with tiny onyx eyes and wings outspread as if in flight. "Communication amulets," she explained as Harry examined them. "Ancient Addams family magic, predating modern restrictions. They allow the wearers to send emotion-infused thought messages across any distance. Not detailed communications, but impressions, warnings, or reassurance. One for each of you," Gomez added. "Should you become separated or face immediate danger, the connection might prove vital." Harry accepted these gifts with profound gratitude, recognizing them as expressions of his family's love and concern rather than lack of confidence in his abilities. "Remember all we've taught you," Morticia said, embracing him before their departure. "Particularly about death's true nature. It may prove your greatest weapon against one who fears it above all else." The months that followed tested Harry in ways even his unorthodox upbringing couldn't fully prepare him for. From the chaotic escape from Privet Drive, where he'd briefly returned to maintain the blood protection until his 17th birthday, to infiltrating the Ministry for Slytherin's locket, each challenge demanded both conventional magic and the unique perspective his Addams upbringing had cultivated. The locket Horcrux proved particularly insidious, affecting the wearer's mood and amplifying negative emotions. While Ron struggled most visibly with its influence, Harry found his own mind invaded by uncharacteristic doubts about his adoptive family. "What if they only took you in because of your connection to Voldemort?" the locket's influence whispered during his watch shifts. "What if their interest was never love but magical potential?" Harry recognized these thoughts as foreign impositions, the Horcrux attempting to undermine his greatest strength, his absolute confidence in the Addams family's unconditional acceptance. "Interesting approach," he murmured to the locket during one particularly strong attack. "But ineffective. Mother warned me about artifacts that target emotional vulnerabilities." When Ron eventually destroyed the locket with Gryffindor's sword, Harry observed the dying soul fragment with analytical interest rather than revulsion. "The scream sounded incomplete," he noted afterward. "Like a partial death of something already fragmented." "Only you would analyze the sound of a Horcrux dying," Ron said with a shaky laugh, still recovering from the locket's visual torture of showing Hermione choosing Harry over him. "Understanding destruction is key to implementing it effectively," Harry replied, quoting one of Grandmama's favorite sayings. "Each Horcrux might reveal something useful about how to approach the others." Their journey led them to Xenophilius Lovegood and the tale of the Deathly Hallows, the Elder Wand, Resurrection Stone, and Invisibility Cloak that together were said to master death. While Ron and Hermione debated the story's veracity, Harry found himself oddly certain of its truth. Mother's stories often referenced 3 objects of transcendence, he told them. Ancient artifacts that bridged the divide between living and dead. The description matches too precisely to be coincidental. "You think your family knew about the Hallows?" Hermione asked skeptically. The Addams family grimoires contain references to powerful objects that align with the Hallows descriptions, Harry confirmed. Though they're described less as tools to master death and more as instruments for harmonizing with death's fundamental nature. This perspective shift proved crucial when Harry realized Voldemort was hunting the Elder Wand, seeking unbeatable power to overcome the connection between their wands. He misunderstands the Hallows just as he misunderstands death, Harry observed during their planning discussions. He sees them as weapons of domination rather than tools of integration. Their quest culminated in capture and imprisonment at Malfoy Manor, where Bellatrix Lestrange's torture of Hermione pushed Harry to his limits. Even his Addams training in managing fear couldn't fully quell his panic at his friend's screams. In that desperate moment, Harry activated the raven pendant Morticia had given him, sending a focused plea for any possible family assistance. The response came in an unexpected form. Dobby the house elf, who had occasionally worked at the Addams mansion doing specialized cleaning that even Lurch found challenging. Mistress Addams sends Dobby to help Harry Potter. The elf announced upon appearing in their cellar prison. Says family magic called through special pathways. Dobby's rescue led to their escape, though at terrible cost. The loyal elf died taking Bellatrix's knife that was meant for Harry. As they stood on the beach near Shell Cottage, Harry cradled Dobby's small body with genuine grief. "I want to bury him," he told Bill and Fleur. "Properly, by hand, not by magic." Of course, Bill agreed, looking slightly surprised at Harry's composure in the face of death. As Harry dug the grave beneath the stars, he found himself performing a modified version of an Addams funeral rite, speaking words of transition rather than ending, acknowledging Dobby's journey onward rather than simply his absence from the living. "Death isn't separation but transformation," he murmured as he gently laid the elf in his resting place. "Your sacrifice connects us eternally, beyond physical form." In the days that followed at Shell Cottage, their plans crystallized around their next target, a potential Horcrux in the Lestrange vault at Gringotts. When questioned about the risks, Harry quoted Gomez, "The most dangerous path often leads most directly to the heart of things." Their Gringotts heist, utilizing Polyjuice Potion, Imperious Curses, and ultimately a blind dragon, succeeded against impossible odds. Escaping on Dragonback with Hufflepuff's cup secured, Harry felt the pieces aligning toward inevitable confrontation. "We need to get to Hogwarts," he announced as they regrouped after the dragon landing. "The last Horcrux is there, something of Ravenclaw's. And so is he, or he will be soon. He knows we're hunting them now." Through Aberforth Dumbledore's assistance, they entered the castle to find it transformed under the Carrow's brutal regime. The Room of Requirement became headquarters for Dumbledore's army's resistance movement, now led by Neville with unexpected confidence. As Harry searched for Ravenclaw's diadem, Voldemort's presence grew closer, his thoughts bleeding through their connection despite Harry's Occlumency shields. The night culminated in open battle as Death Eaters besieged the castle. Amidst the chaos, Harry located the diadem in the Room of Hidden Things, only for Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle to confront them. When Crabbe unleashed Fiendfire, the uncontrollable magical flame consumed the room, and the Horcrux, while nearly claiming their lives as well. Crabbe didn't understand the nature of what he conjured, Harry observed as they caught their breath after escaping. Grandmother Frump says magical fire responds to the caster's control. His fear fed its frenzy. The battle's tide turned against them when Voldemort announced a 1-hour ceasefire, demanding Harry surrender himself to spare further bloodshed. It was during this lull that they witnessed Nagini killing Snape on Voldemort's orders, the Dark Lord believing this would transfer the Elder Wand's allegiance to himself. Collecting Snape's memories as the professor died, Harry experienced a moment of connection with his complicated protector. "Look at me," Snape whispered with his final breath, seeking Lily's eyes in Harry's face. "I see you," Harry replied softly. "All of you, both shadow and light." The pensive revelations that followed transformed Harry's understanding completely. Snape's love for Lily, his lifelong protection of her son despite his complicated feelings, and most shockingly, Dumbledore's carefully concealed truth, Harry himself was an unintentional Horcrux, carrying a fragment of Voldemort's soul since the night his parents died. "So I must die," Harry murmured, absorbing this revelation with remarkable calm. For Voldemort to become mortal, the peace within me must be destroyed. Where another might have raged against this fate or sought alternatives, Harry's Addams upbringing had prepared him uniquely for this moment. Death had never been his enemy or greatest fear, it had always been presented to him as a natural transition, sometimes necessary, always inevitable, and potentially beautiful when embraced with dignity. As he walked into the Forbidden Forest to meet Voldemort, Harry felt an unusual clarity. He activated his Raven pendant one final time, sending not fear or desperation but love and gratitude to his adoptive family, a farewell acknowledging what they had given him through their unique perspective on life and death. The forest clearing where Voldemort waited with his Death Eaters fell silent as Harry emerged from the trees. No invisibility cloak, no attempt at stealth, he approached openly, wand away, face composed. Harry Potter, Voldemort's high voice carried in the still air. The boy who lived, come to die. I've come to meet death properly, Harry corrected calmly. There's a difference. Voldemort's lipless mouth curved in a mocking smile. Philosophy at the end? How Dumbledore of you. Not his teaching, actually, Harry replied conversationally, as if they were having a normal discussion rather than a prelude to execution. My family, the Addamses, taught me that death isn't something to fear but to understand. A flicker of unease crossed Voldemort's serpentine features. He had expected terror, pleading, perhaps even defiance, not this composed acceptance. The Addams family, Bellatrix interjected with a mix of disdain and uncharacteristic caution. Dark practitioners who refuse to align with proper cause. They understand things about death that most wizards have forgotten, Harry continued, addressing Voldemort directly. Including why your approach to immortality is fundamentally flawed. Anger replaced Voldemort's momentary uncertainty. Enough. I have the Elder Wand. I have conquered death while you walk willingly to it. Who is flawed, Potter? Harry simply smiled. Someone who truly understood death wouldn't need to split their soul 7 times to avoid it. The mention of Horcruxes visibly shocked Voldemort, his red eyes widening momentarily before narrowing in fury. Avada Kedavra. The green light struck Harry directly in the chest. As consciousness faded, his last thought was of Morticia's gentle voice, death is just another room in the mansion of existence, my darling. The door may appear frightening, but what lies beyond is simply, different. Harry found himself in a place that resembled King's Cross Station, yet cleaner, emptier, and suffused with misty white light. Beneath a bench lay a small, flayed-looking creature, the fragment of Voldemort's soul that had lived inside him, now separated and dying. You cannot help it, came Dumbledore's voice as the headmaster approached, whole and healthy in appearance. That piece of soul is beyond saving. Their conversation revealed much, confirmation that Harry possessed all 3 Hallows, explanation of why Harry had survived once again, the blood connection created when Voldemort used Harry's blood for resurrection, and clarification that Harry could choose to move on, or return to finish what he'd started. If I go back, I can end this? Harry asked. Finish Voldemort for good? I believe so, Dumbledore nodded. Though nothing is certain. Harry looked thoughtfully at the pathetic creature under the bench. Mother, Morticia, always said fragmentation diminishes potential. I see it now. He's reduced himself to this. Your adoptive mother has remarkable insight, Dumbledore acknowledged. The Addams family's perspective on death has given you a strength Tom Riddle could never comprehend. Not just strength, Harry corrected. Understanding. Death isn't defeat, it's completion. With that clarity, Harry chose to return, awakening to find himself lying on the forest floor as Narcissa Malfoy checked whether he lived or died. Is Draco alive? She whispered, her fingers at his pulse point. Yes, Harry breathed back, barely audible. He's dead. Narcissa announced to the waiting Death Eaters, her self-interest outweighing loyalty to Voldemort when her son's welfare hung in the balance. What followed tested every aspect of Harry's training, being carried as a corpse back to Hogwarts, listening to his friend's grief, waiting for the precise moment to reveal himself. When Neville defied Voldemort directly and pulled Gryffindor's sword from the Sorting Hat to decapitate Nagini, Harry seized his opportunity. The final confrontation in the Great Hall became not merely a duel but a philosophical standoff. As they circled each other before the watching crowd, Harry spoke clearly enough for all to hear. "It's not too late, Tom," he said, using Voldemort's birth name deliberately. "You've damaged your soul beyond recognition, but remorse might still save what remains." "Save?" Voldemort sneered. "I've transcended ordinary limitations. I've conquered death." "You haven't conquered it," Harry countered. "You've merely fragmented yourself trying to escape it. And now all your Horcruxes are gone." The shock rippled through the watching crowd as Voldemort's red eyes widened in genuine fear for the first time. "Impossible," he hissed. "You lie." The diary, destroyed by basilisk venom. The ring, cursed Dumbledore but was broken by the sword. The locket, the cup, the diadem, all gone. Nagini just lost her head. And the piece in me was killed in the forest, but I was given a choice to return. Each item Harry listed seemed to physically affect Voldemort, his body appearing somehow less substantial with each named Horcrux. "What is this magic?" Voldemort demanded, genuine confusion in his voice. "What are you?" "Just Harry," he replied simply. "Harry Potter Addams. Someone who was taught that death isn't something to fear but to accept as part of life's natural cycle." "Lies!" Voldemort shrieked, raising the Elder Wand. "Avada Kedavra. Expelliarmus." Harry countered with his original Holy Wand. The spells collided in spectacular fashion, but instead of the golden cage that had formed in the graveyard, this time the Elder Wand flew from Voldemort's hand, arcing through the air to Harry while the killing curse rebounded on its caster. Voldemort fell backward, arms splayed, eyes rolling upward, killed not by superior magic but by his own rebounded curse and fundamental misunderstanding of wand lore, sacrifice, and death itself. The silence that followed lasted only seconds before celebration erupted around Harry. As people rushed to embrace him and share their joy, he found himself observing Voldemort's empty shell with an analytical eye. He looked smaller, Harry noted to Hermione when she reached him. Diminished. He was, she agreed, tears of relief streaking her dusty face. Everything he did to avoid death just made his life less meaningful. In the aftermath, as the wounded were treated and the dead honored, Harry found himself sitting alone in the headmaster's office, the Elder Wand in his possession but not his soul. "I'm going to put it back," he told Ron and Hermione when they found him. "The wand belongs with Dumbledore. Power over death isn't about conquering it with superior force but understanding its proper place." "That's your Addams side talking," Ron observed with a small smile. "And it's right," Hermione added thoughtfully. Voldemort never understood that mastering death means accepting it, not avoiding it. After returning the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb and repairing his own Holy Wand with its power, Harry was finally able to return to the Addams mansion. The family greeted him not with excessive celebration but with dignified acknowledgement of his journey completed. "You faced your moment of transition and chose to return," Morticia observed as they gathered in the family cemetery for a quiet commemoration of those lost in battle. "Few are granted such perspective on death's doorway." "It wasn't frightening," Harry told them, describing the King's Cross experience. "It was peaceful. Like you always said, just another state of being." "Of course," Gomez nodded knowingly. "Death has never been the enemy. Fear of it creates far more suffering than the transition itself." In the months that followed, as the wizarding world rebuilt and reformed, Harry found himself increasingly serving as a bridge between conventional magical society and the older traditions the Addams family represented. His unique perspective on death, darkness, and their place in a balanced magical understanding gained new respect in light of how it had ultimately defeated Voldemort. Minister Shacklebolt, recognizing the value of this broader magical perspective, established a Department of Magical Heritage and Integration, inviting Morticia to serve as special consultant on pre-statute magical traditions. Her appointment caused considerable controversy but opened crucial dialogues about the arbitrary categorization of magic as dark versus light. It's not about rehabilitation, Harry explained to a skeptical Wisengamot committee. It's about recognition that magic itself is neutral, a natural force shaped by intention rather than inherently good or evil. On the first anniversary of the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry organized a memorial unlike any the wizarding world had seen, combining traditional remembrance with Addams-inspired celebration of transition. "Those we lost aren't gone but transformed," he told the gathered survivors. "Their influence continues through our memories, our actions, and our lives shaped by their sacrifice." Most surprising was Voldemort's inclusion in the memorial, not celebrated or forgiven, but acknowledged as a warning of what happens when fear of death consumes life's meaning. Tom Riddle feared death so desperately that he destroyed everything that makes life worth living, Harry's speech concluded. In avoiding his end, he lost his beginning and middle as well. May we remember that death gives life its value through its inevitability, not diminish it through fear. 5 years after Voldemort's fall, Harry received an unexpected letter delivered by a raven so ancient its feathers had turned partly white. The handwriting was spidery but familiar, belonging to a former Death Eater now serving a life sentence in the reformed Azkaban's medical wing. Potter Addams, the letter began without preamble. "I write not seeking forgiveness but understanding. Death approaches me naturally now, no dark mark can delay it further. The Mediwitches give me weeks. You stood before the Dark Lord without fear. Not bravado, not courage, but genuine acceptance. I've had 5 years to contemplate what I witnessed, and still it confounds me. Your words about death being completion rather than defeat have haunted me. After a lifetime devoted to avoiding mortality at any cost, I find myself desperate to comprehend this perspective before my own transition. Would you visit? Not for reconciliation, too much blood lies between us, but for explanation. Help me understand what you understand. I find myself, against all expectation, begging for this final insight." Antonin Dolohov. Harry shared the letter with Morticia, who studied it thoughtfully before handing it back. "Even the most dedicated practitioners of fear sometimes seek understanding at the end," she observed. "Will you go?" Harry nodded slowly. "Mother always said death reveals truth that life often obscures. Perhaps this is his moment of clarity." The visit to Azkaban was somber but surprisingly meaningful. Dolohov, once a fearsome Death Eater, had been reduced to a skeletal figure tethered to monitoring charms and pain relief potions. Yet his mind remained sharp, his eyes alert as Harry entered his cell. "Potter Addams," he acknowledged weakly. "You came. Death deserves respect, even when the life preceding it was misguided," Harry replied, taking a seat beside the bed. "Explain it to me," Dolohov requested, dispensing with pleasantries. "This, acceptance. How did you walk to your death without fear?" "It wasn't fearlessness," Harry clarified. "It was perspective. Death isn't an ending but a transformation, not something separate from life but its natural completion." "Pretty words," Dolohov scoffed weakly. "Philosophy is cold comfort against extinction." "It's not extinction," Harry countered. "Energy transforms but doesn't disappear. Consciousness shifts but continues. The Addams family has communicated with the departed for centuries, not through tricks or imagination, but genuine connection." "Proof?" Dolohov challenged. "None I can provide externally," Harry admitted. "But consider, if death were truly the end, why would its fear hold such power? We recognize instinctively that something continues, even if we can't define it precisely." Their conversation continued for hours, touching on magical theory, philosophical traditions, and the nature of existence itself. By its end, something had shifted in Dolohov's expression, not complete acceptance, but the beginning of comprehension. "The Dark Lord was wrong," he finally said, his voice barely audible. Not just morally, but fundamentally. He feared what he should have studied. Fear limits understanding, Harry agreed. It narrows perspective to survival rather than meaning. As Harry rose to leave, Dolohov spoke once more. He would have begged too, you know. At the end, if he'd lived long enough to face natural death. Begged for what you understand instinctively. 3 days later, word came that Antonin Dolohov had died peacefully in his sleep, the first reported Death Eater to do so in generations. In subsequent years, similar requests came from others who had followed Voldemort's path of fear and destruction. One by one, as age or illness brought them face to face with mortality, former enemies sought Harry's insight into the perspective that had allowed him to face death without terror. The wizarding world gradually transformed as well. The rigid categorization of magic as dark or light gave way to more nuanced understanding of intention and consequence. Ancient traditions, preserved by families like the Addamses, were re-examined for their wisdom rather than feared for their difference. On Harry's 30th birthday, celebrated as always with the traditional Addams midnight gathering in the family graveyard, Morticia presented him with a special gift, a book bound in unusual silver-gray material that seemed to shift and change in different light. Your own grimoire, she explained. For recording the understanding you've cultivated at the intersection of traditions. Bound in veilcloth from the Department of Mysteries, Kingsley arranged it specially. For future generations, Gomez added, puffing his cigar contentedly. The Potter-Addams perspective deserves preservation. As Harry accepted the book, a distant roll of thunder punctuated the moment perfectly, nature acknowledging the balance of light and shadow, life and death, that he had come to represent in the wizarding world. Mother always said understanding death helps us live more meaningfully, Harry reflected, running his fingers over the shifting cover. I never expected that understanding would become my purpose. The most powerful magic comes from embracing both sides of existence, Morticia replied with serene wisdom. You stand between worlds, Potter and Addams, conventional and ancient, living and dead. There's profound power in that perspective. Looking around at his gathered family, birth and adoptive, living and ghostly, as several family ancestors had partially materialized for the occasion, Harry felt profound gratitude for the unusual path that had shaped his understanding. Voldemort had feared death so desperately that he had fragmented himself trying to escape it. Harry, taught by Morticia to see death as beautiful and natural, had maintained wholeness that ultimately proved stronger than all Voldemort's Horcruxes combined. In the end, it wasn't superior magic or greater power that had defeated the Dark Lord, but a fundamentally different relationship with mortality itself, the perspective of a boy raised by a family who danced with darkness rather than fearing it, who celebrated death as part of life's magnificent cycle rather than its enemy. And in that perspective lay not just Voldemort's defeat, but the wizarding world's ongoing transformation, from fear to understanding, from division to integration, from darkness denied to darkness embraced as natural counterpart to light. As midnight struck on Harry's 30th birthday, the assembled Addamses raised their glasses in the family's traditional toast, to life magnificent and death beautiful, the eternal dance continues. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.